Right. Right, guys, Cody back again, dropping yet another video. I'm very honoured and humbled to have former prison officer Joe on the channel. How are you doing, Joe? You all right?
Yeah, sounds very well. Thanks for having me on the channel.
Do you know what? Honestly, I've been mithering you. I've been mithering you to get you on, because knowledge and stuff like that. And so, Joe, can you just give us a little bit of brief background about yourself, please?
Yeah, no worries. So I joined the prison service in the early 2000s. I think it was about 2003. And I was initially posted to Wandsworth in southwest London. And I did my POELT training, which stands, I don't know if they've changed the name these days, but it stands for Prison Officer Entry Level Training. I did that at Feltham. And back then it was 12 weeks long, and we were all put up in a hotel, and it was a bit mental. So I did a few years in Wandsworth, where I did a stint on security there, which was sound. And also that's where I got to join the Tornado team and did my training up at Hatfield Woodhouse in Doncaster. That was it. And so I did a few years at Wandsworth, and then I went to Lewis, mainly because it was a lot closer to home. It was like Wandsworth was a 2-hour drive each way. So I got a transfer to Lewis and became an SO in Lewis, and I carried on the Tornado, and then became a senior officer. But while I was at Lewis, I did a Open University degree, and that's how I ended up leaving the prison service.
So what made you initially want to become a prison officer? I'm interested to know.
Right. Truthfully, I was kind of just going around doing like pretty crap jobs. I did a music degree, which wasn't much use for anything, and I was sort of drifting around various crap jobs. And my ex-wife, as she is now, brought back an advert in the paper, big full-page advert, sort of, you know, join the prison service, have an exciting, rewarding career, pension, progression. And I've been watching Bad Girls as well, so I thought I'll give it a go.
So how long was the process from applying to actually getting like your POELT training start date? So how strict is the vetting? Is it, I'm assuming it's very strict.
Back then it was, I don't think it's anything like this now, so don't take this as gospel anymore. But it was, for me, it was 18 months from sending off the application to getting a date. Which was absolutely long, crazy.
18 months is long.
Yeah. I think they'd messed up somewhere, because I had to keep ringing up, and they were like, "Oh yeah, you've got a fitness test at Wormwood Scrubs, and then 6 months later you've got an assessment centre day." And I just don't think they were very well organised back then. I think.
Well, can you give us a breakdown? Can you give us a breakdown of that, like that period? So from applying, like the next steps leading up to POELT training.
Yeah, so I applied. It was a massive application form, and obviously you had to send in security vetting information, you know, past convictions, things like that. So all that came up clean, and the next thing, I didn't hear anything for months. Then I got a date for the assessment centre, which was this like big like house in the grounds of Wormwood Scrubs, and you go in, and there's simulations in each room and a video camera in the corner, and it's still like this now. So in each room you go in, there's a different scenario. Like I went into one, and there was this woman screaming in my face about how my dog had gone in and torn up her garden, and I had to sort of, they're all actors, so you have to sort of deal with that, and they're grading you on how well you're managing these scenarios. In another one, I was dealing with a complaint. It was like, they're all fictional situations, and I was having to deal with a complaint, and the member of staff who I had to interview about the complaint said something like quite racist while I was talking to them. So they're looking for the fact that you pick up on that and that you deal with it and challenge it, things like that. So you do like 6 of these various scenarios, and you get sent away. There's a bit of a medical test, eyesight, hearing, that kind of thing. But went away, didn't hear anything again for a few months. Like I said, I think it's better now. And then just started training up for my fitness test, because I knew that if I'd got through that scenario thing, the fitness test would be the last kind of obstacle, really. So I got called back, did my fitness test at Scrubs, And then a few months later, got my start date for Wandsworth.
So what's is it beep test and then you start POELT? Or is that
Yeah,
the
yeah.
process? Right. So there was so with that thing in the house and stuff and the cameras, you said it's all about your reacting. How do you react? Are you assertive? Are you passive? How do you deal with conflicts and like those sorts of scenarios? And then so the first start of POELT, where does it take place and how does it start? Like week 1, please.
The scenario.
Like so so when you get to POELT and everything, when you like the POELT start date and things, you put up in an hotel, like you said, what's week 1 like when you start POELT?
Oh right, yeah, I get you. So I don't think they do with the hotel thing anymore either, or residential. It all used to be residential, like you'd go away, and I was in this kind of grey area where it wasn't residential anymore, but they were still putting you up in a hotel if it was miles from your house. It's all day courses now, I think, and they run at various prisons around the country. So you'll go in and you obviously first sort of few days is just settling in, finding your feet, getting fitted with your uniform, and then it's like being at school really. You get your syllabus. You've got to learn quite a lot of the prison, what they call PSOs, which are prison service orders, which are basically like the law that prisons are run by. So you've got to know your PSOs and your PSIs, which are prison service instructions. There's a lot of that. There's a lot of being grilled on things like how to manage prisoners' property, prisoners' legal rights, diversity, equality. So there's a lot of classroom learning. And then there's also the what we call CNR, which is control and restraint training, was a big, sort of almost 50% of the course as well, to be fair.
Does so week 1, week 2, so with the control and restraint training, is it 7 to 10 days? I think someone said to me a while back, or is it more than that? Because you said it's like 50% of it, so it's obviously more than like 7 to 10 days, I'm assuming.
I think the course is shorter now than when I trained.
Yeah. So what with the control and restraint training, how much do they go into it? I'm assuming like arm locks and control and restraint. Someone's kicking off a scenario and you've got to take hold and stuff. How in depth did they go with the control and restraining techniques and stuff?
The basic CNR to get through the course was not that in depth, really. Like you said, it's a lot of arm locks and blocks, how to use your baton, how to basic work with a shield and a 3-man team, that kind of thing. And I think the final assessment for me back then, it's probably pretty similar, was one of the instructors was all kitted up in a cell in padded gear and everything with a table leg. And he was the prisoner, and you had to go in as a 3-man team and basically take him out of the cell, deal with him.
Like a cell extraction.
Cell extraction, exactly.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. So how much does the control and restraint training, like obviously scenarios are fantastic, but how realistic is that obviously they work on the wing stuff, but like what I was trying to allude to, let me just go back. So the control and restraint side of things, how does what you taught once you get onto the wing, is it seamless and it's instantaneous, or does it not really fully prepare you? That's what I'm trying to get to. Does it not fully prepare you, or does it fully prepare you for when you're on the wing and you're trying to twist people up or physically restrain them?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't prepare you. In the training, it's all very, very controlled. Your prisoner stands with his arms out to his side. You go, get their arm round, lock on, da 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 da. In reality, when it actually happens for real on the landing, especially if you're a little bloke with me, you'll find it all goes out the window and someone's swinging you around by the head.
No, that's the thing though. Because go on, continue, Joe.
No, that's it, really. Yeah, go for it.
So this is the thing. So the whole POELT training, like I said, I obviously having not done it, I'm like you just alluded to there with the control and restraint training. Does the whole of POELT fully prepare these people that are going to go into the prison service thinking of becoming a prison officer? Does POELT protect, Is it? Oh, my mind's just gone blank. Right. Again.
That's all right. I'm going to move.
So, sorry,
I'm going to move
so
downstairs.
Go on.
I'm just moving downstairs because I'm quite far away from my router, so I think it's messing up your feed.
No, it's all right. Go on, Joe. So yeah, so that's what I was trying to get to. How much does POELT fully prepare you for life on the landings?
20%, if that.
Is that it?
Yeah, yeah.
How often do you have to do? How often do you have to do the refreshers?
C&R refreshers yearly, or it was when I was in.
Months. And did that change in the time that you was in the service?
No, I think it was always yearly. You always had to do your refresher every year. Yeah,
it's unbelievable. So when you then had finished POELT, how long was it before you got your start date? And did you shadow? Did you shadow, or shadowing not a thing then?
Yeah, it was. So when you start your POELT training, you've got your start date. You're in the service already.
Yeah.
So after your 9 or 12 weeks or whatever it is now, you go back to your prison. And then, like you say, you do maybe a couple of weeks of shadowing where you're not counted on the staffing on the wing, and spend time with like more experienced officers, and then just kind of find your feet.
Go on. Do you remember what your first day was like when you'd been given your keys? It was your first unsupervised. You're not shadowing anybody. It's your first day on the wing. How was that? Like,
it was a bit it was intimidating in a way, because you think, right, this is real now, and when your SO shouts unlock and you're on your landing with like one other officer, and you just, especially when you're brand new, and I looked really young as well when I started, so people tested me quite a bit, you know what I mean, sort of see how I dealt with things, what kind of person I was. So there's a lot of that. There's in your first few months, even maybe first year or so, you'll find that you've got to figure out who you are and how you want to be. And, prisoners, inmates, whatever, they will try and figure you out as well. Like, how is this gov an arsehole? Is he sound? How far can I push him, or is he straight down the line? So, it's interesting. It's first year is definitely interesting.
So how soon from starting did you have your first kickoff or incident?
I reckon it was actually a good couple of months.
Before you had your first. And this was at Wandsworth?
Yeah, Wandsworth. Yeah, on D wing.
So what's the camaraderie like with the officers? Like, whilst at work and away from work, did you socialise with the officers away from work, or was it just go to work, and then just go home and continue with your life?
For me, it was a case of going to work and going on, because I lived so far away. But there was a lot of socialising. I think back when I started, Wandsworth still had its own social club round the back, and a lot of prisons had their officers' mess, and you could go out after work and have
a few drinks and stuff like that. It's mad.
Yeah, so it was a good crack.
What sort of, during your time as an officer, what sort of situations did you, like, from violence to cold blues? Cold blues, for those that don't know, is like near, like, literally death and like close to death sort of situations. Cold reds, obviously slashings and things like that. What sort of incidents did you end up seeing, being involved in?
Literally everything. I would say, like, I think I did 13 years in the end, and like by that time, there's not much you haven't actually seen. At the kind of low level end of things, you've got people refusing to bang up and so on. Like you say, right through to wings being smashed to pieces. So yeah, plus, like you say, all of the other things like self-harm, suicide attempts. I think the first actual one was not long into me starting the job. The first sort of suicide on a wing. They often count.
Do you remember that with that first cold blue, that first suicide? What was It's going to be a silly question, but what was it hanging? Was it slashing? Was it, how did it affect you as well? Mentally, psychologically?
That's a tough one, actually, because I've always been really good at putting things in boxes.
Yeah.
And when I put something in a box in my head and lock it away, that's it for me. I'm, move on, and a new day is a new day. But it does affect people. It changes the mood on the wing. Officers, I didn't particularly know the guy very well either, if I'm honest, but officers who knew him really well and, had kind of a good relationship with him, they're affected. And yeah.
Do you have the flip side of that with officers that are quite, well, the prisoners? Because there's a prison page on Facebook. You're probably aware of it, called what's it? Something banter.
No. Know the danger.
Know the danger. Sorry, know the danger. That's it. So with know the danger, the mentality of, not all of them are serving officers, because obviously it's not exclusive. It's not a private page, but there are some officers that I've seen that show they work at HMP, and they're, or proclaim to be, and they're actually like, one off the wing, and it's just absolutely. Your mindset was, like you said, you processed it. It's part of the job, and you don't let it phase you, as in thingy. But there are officers that I believe that are, not all officers, I want to make that point, but there are officers that are actually like just not bothered, simply not bothered. It's just like, yeah, well, he's gone and that's it. It was like they didn't like him as a person, or they're just like one off, and because they've got both mindsets. What I'm trying to do is trying to balance it. See, because obviously I'm trying to just show the other side of things. There must have been officers during your time that when there was cold blues or suicides, where they're just like, they wasn't bothered, or they're just like, yeah, it's just one of them. It's just like one off, and they just simply don't care.
Yeah, totally. And I don't think with that kind of thing, it's hard to judge or sort of blame people for being like that, because quite often the people who are like that, they've done years and years and years, and it's broken them. Do you know what I mean? And maybe if they could get out and do something else, they probably should have.
Yeah, like, so with the cold blues, how many did you experience in your time as an officer? Roughly.
Double figures. Yeah.
Was the one case where you was like the first on the scene, you did the unlock and you found them?
Yeah,
so,
totally.
So even the strongest person with the strongest mind, with the strongest personality, seeing like you said, the self-harm, the suicide attempts, being subject to violence, witnessing violence, it must have taken its toll in some psychological way with yourself, or literally it didn't.
No, it does. Yeah. You find probably the more and more things you've dealt with, you tend to shut yourself off a bit. I only recognized these things afterwards, but I became quite moody. I didn't want to be around people. I didn't, I was at home. I'd go off and just go upstairs and pretend to be reading a book or something, because I just didn't want to deal with people. So it does, you don't recognize that it's affecting you at the time. But if you look at like the divorce rates and everything for officers, they're through the roof, and I was one of them as well, So yeah.
So with, like, when I've been in Strangers, I've been in Forest Bank twice, right? So on my last stretch, I was a cleaner, right? So we had a very good working relationship with the officers. Now, the amount of officers that like were either showing signs of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, prison officers were drinking, using alcohol as a crux. I don't know if they was using drugs. I've got to be honest, I don't know. I know you guys, are officers drug tested as well? That's another interesting thing I've always wanted to know.
No, we weren't when I was in. I don't know if that's changed.
Do you think that should change though, where officers should be drug tested? And if it should be just like it is with prisoners, there should be a zero tolerance. If you test positive as an officer for drugs, do you believe that they should? Do you believe that should be a thing with drug testing for officers?
It's a tough one, because so many people use recreational drugs now in whatever job they do, and I'm not saying that they ought to or anything. it depends what your approach is. If you're drug testing and you're finding positives, maybe it needs to be more of a like an investigation, and then find out why. You know, why is that? Do you need any help? Are you struggling? What's going on? But yeah, clearly, if someone's, you know, well out of control with it, then they probably would need to be out the job.
Or like a 3 strikes and out sort of thing. Because if you're using it recreationally, you do it once every blue moon. But then if you get 3 positive tests in a certain period, that they should be, because obviously if it becomes like a daily addiction, it could impair them on the job. It could cloud the judgment and things like that. Yeah,
I think that's fair. That would be a good way of dealing with it. It's like a middle ground. And the other thing is, like, you don't know if you were to randomly drug test everybody in whatever job, prison service, wherever, you might find that you've got no staff left after.
Yeah, true. And the thing is as well, some of them that might be taking recreational drugs, officers we're talking here, might be doing so as a coping mechanism for what they're experiencing on the job.
Yeah. I mean, I'd be more worried about an officer who's, what am I trying to say here? Is like someone who's had smoked a joint at the weekend in the garden.
Yeah,
wouldn't be my biggest concern with the service when you're looking at, like, you know, the corruption and stuff like that. People bringing stuff in. That's the bigger.
Yeah. So with the one thing that I think that down the line, it's not happened yet, but I believe years down the line, or there will be like there'll be a study to do with prisoners, prison officers, violence, and that sort of vortex of violence and self-harm and drugs and debt and all these things. And I do believe that there will be, in the future, people will bring awareness to PTSD for prisoners and prison officers to do with the environment that is prison. I genuinely do believe that.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I remember years ago, I was trying to explain to my ex-wife now why I wasn't enjoying my life a lot, really, at the time. And I said, I go to work, and this isn't like feel sorry for me thing, because it's actually about you guys, you know, on the other side of the door. I was like, I go and work in a place where no sane human being wants to be, no matter what side of the gate they're on. No one wants to be in prison, and not that many people probably really want to work in them after a few years. You know, most people who've been in for a few years would get out if they could. So I was like, I work somewhere where nobody really wants to go. No one would choose to spend their days inside a prison, whether you're a prisoner or staff a lot of the time.
So how did your friends and family how hard is it being a prison officer, dealing with, like I say, some of the most dangerous, some of the most violent, but also some of the most vulnerable and susceptible people in society, with mental health being what it is within prisons? How hard is it to explain to someone that's not in the service, or that's not being a prisoner or a prisoner's family, what the job entails, how it affects you? It must, when people are talking to you about the job and you're trying to explain to them, for a lot of people, it must have gone over their head, because you are witnessing some horrific things as an officer.
Yeah, that's true. But I think to explain the job to someone who's literally not got a clue, it's like, the job's what you make it. And you can be someone who just opens and shuts doors and, you know, hands out bog roll and doesn't engage with anyone, you know, and quotes every rule at someone as to why they can't go to the gym. You can be that guy. Or you could try and actually make something of it. Because at the end of the day, you've got to live in that building for half your week, and the other guys are living in that building all the time. You know, you've got to make something of it. If you're gonna be, am I allowed to say prick?
Yeah, of course you can. Yeah, swear, be you, man. Yeah, it's cool.
If you're gonna be a prick to everybody and strut around, you know, Mr. Billy Big Balls, then you might enjoy the power and the, you know, the feeling that gives you for a while, but it's going to rot you inside, isn't it? you've got to have a decent working relationship with people. So I sort of say, well, it's kind of like, it's half being a nurse, half being a copper, and half being a social worker.
100%, all rolled into one. I know the answer to this, I believe. Does the pay reflect the dangers and the mental impact, psychological and emotional impact that you get being an officer? Does the pay, is it reflective of what, in other words, do officers get paid as well as they should do? I don't believe they do. That's my opinion.
No, I don't think so now. I mean, the pay got eroded. I was lucky actually when I joined on the old pay scheme and decent everything, and then when I was an SO, I was on kind of 30 odd grand a year, which it's taken me sort of a long time to sort of even get back to a similar level. So I was on decent money actually, but now it's not. I think a starting officer's like 18,000. So you could go and work in Aldi and not get a chair leg in the back of your head for that money. Yeah, I don't think it's enough.
How does it work with pay grades and stuff like that? How long, when you was in, how long did it work from you went from one pay band to the next pay band and so on and so forth? I believe it is banded.
Yeah. You'd get your annual increment where your pay would go up a bit. But when I was there, like, becoming an SO was quite tough, you know, until you had a few years in the job. No one would take you seriously, even putting yourself forward for the exams. But I think it's a lot quicker now. I think people are getting sort of promoted into sort of that what's now the version of the old senior officer rank is, I think, called supervising officer. And I think people are getting that after like a year in the job these days.
Is that because staff retention is that bad? Do you understand why so many people join the service and within 12 months, 2 years, they've gone? Do you understand why?
Yeah, completely. I think some people join because they want to join for the right reasons.
Yeah. And
they can either go one or two ways. They can find their niche, you know, find what they really love doing, whether that's being on the wing. I mean, some of the happiest officers I ever worked with cleaning officers. You know, they find that that's where they enjoy there. They've got a good crew of lads with them and they make it good for them. Other people join and they want to make a good go of it, but think they can change the world. And when, after a couple of years in, you know, realize that it's not working for them, what they thought they were going to be able to get out of the job's not there. And then you've got people who go in, they want to scrap every day with prisoners, you know, and make life as tough on themselves, and they either stay forever or they're out pretty quick with it.
Yeah, there must be people that join the service that are like, just, not all of them, I want to make the point, but there must be officers that, well, there is officers that join the service and they've got a sort of sadistic mindset. I've seen, like I said, not all officers, I want to make the point, there are good and bad. That's even in the prison population. There are good and bad on both sides of the door. But there are definitely officers there that I've seen officers antagonize. When I was a cleaner, there was a mentally ill man. He should have been in a psychiatric unit. And this officer was antagonizing him, was poking him through the door. And it wasn't just one incident. I watched it. He'd go to his door. He was in a single cell restriction. And he's going through the door. He's whispering stuff. And this guy was banging out of his door. He was on his buzzer. I popped his flap, right? I said to Wilkie was the officer. I said, Wilkie. And Wilkie was the one that was antagonizing him. I've gone to the park. The kid start bollock naked, covered his own shit. Not a dirty protest, just absolutely had had enough. And he was rambling and stuff like that. There are officers that do the job just to be a bastard. I'm sorry to say that, but I genuinely do believe there are officers, and you must have come across officers that had that sort of mindset. Not all of them, but some officers definitely have that mindset.
Yeah. And like you say, I'm going to be really, really clear that is not all prison officers, like you've just said, you know, with the, and like I think any job that gives somebody powers and authority, it's going to attract loads of good people, which it does, and it is going to attract dickheads as well. You know, come and join this job. You're in contract. You know, you can literally dictate when someone eats, shits, and sleeps, and we'll give you a baton and handcuffs and teach you how to better people. It's going to attract bad apples, you know. I think you're going to have the same. If you look at how the American GIs behaved in Vietnam because they were off the leash and able to do so, you know, amongst all of the good people in all of the services, you are going to get these people. Yeah, and I'm not going to lie, I started out as a bit of a knob, because I was modelling the behaviour I was seeing from like the seniors, because Wandsworth had a reputation as it was a tough nick.
Yeah,
you know, you toed the line in Wandsworth in the early sort of 2000s. It was, yeah, it was a pretty austere place. And yeah, I started off my first sort of couple of years in. I was a bellend.
Was that so? When you joined the service, how old was you when you joined, John? If you don't mind me asking.
25-ish, I think.
So when you got into the job, because the one thing, right, and this is going to sound crazy, right? People, because there's not a lot of officers, former officers, sorry, that put themselves out there. I know that we've got people like Neil Samworth and people like that, but they're not. A lot of officers leave the job, and you've got these people that are thinking of joining the service, but they can't contact former prison officers. Like they asked me, because I've got this platform and we've got former officers, one former officer, most of them are ex-prisoners. They often ask me, I can't tell you how many times I've had a text from someone saying, "Hi Cody, I watch your channel. I'm becoming a prison officer or thinking of becoming an officer. If I do become an officer," and it sounds the most stupid question, but I don't think it is a stupid question, "How do you act on the job?" And I've answered that, and I'd like you to answer it, because your insight will be a lot more insightful than mine. Like, so in other words, if someone's going to become a prison officer, or how do you conduct yourself? That sounds like the most silly question, but I don't think it is a silly question.
No, I got you. I think I've got what you mean. Yeah. So the first thing I'd say is, if you want any kind of career out of it, find someone who's more experienced than you, who treats the prisoners decently, and base your behaviour on that. Because, like I just said to you, Cody, I for the first year or so at Wandsworth, I was a bit of a prick. I was copying behaviours I was seeing. I was like, I get behind your door, you know, just to I was a knob. I was amazed I didn't get weighed in more often, actually.
Why was you being, like, in your words, why was you being a prick? Was it, like you said, it was senior management, but how was you being a prick? Just like you said, just if you'll get it, it doesn't even sound like it was old school. It sounded like the power might have gone to your head, or you was mirroring senior officers' actions and things like that. Yeah.
You were sort of seeing, officers who you kind of thought, oh, I look up to this guy because no one ever fucked with him. Yeah. And you sort of copying that behaviour, and you know, it doesn't work. So what I would say to anyone joining, or who wants to know what real life's like, is you've got to go in, and there are rules, and rules need to be upheld, and you know, that's part of your job as a prison officer, is you've got to maintain discipline on your wing. And there are, you know, there's two ways of doing that. And there's the way that's going to leave you mentally healthy, which is to be a decent human being. It's not always going to work. You can be as decent as you want with some people, and they'll still push and push, and you will, you know, be a decent human being isn't going to get you through your career without ever having a bend up. But don't go in and think, you know, I'm powerful now, because you're not. Because at the end of the day, and this is what I learned, without having the prisoners on side, the place doesn't run. The place does not run. So don't think it's all about you. It's not all about you. No matter how big or hard or tough talking you think you are, I guarantee somebody on the other side of the door one day on some wing somewhere is going to be bigger and harder than you are. So you've just got to be a decent person. Find role models who are decent. And even back then in Wandsworth, there was good people. My old PO, she was that's principal officer, was a female PO. She was straight down the line. You know, she throw a few fucks into a prisoner if they needed to hear it, but she was fair. She was absolutely fair, and she wasn't, you know, she wasn't bent in any way. So I respected her, and eventually, like, sort of came round to her way of being, which was, you know, we're all here, we've all got to get on. Rules have to be upheld, and, you know, you are gonna 99 times out of 10, if you go, right, lads, cell spin, step out, they'll step out. You know, you'll get earache for it, you know, because everyone likes to have a piss and a wine when the cell's going to get torn apart. But you will get people who just won't, you know, I ain't coming out, I'm going to fight you. It's going to happen. That's part of the job. And you deal with that. But don't take, the other thing I'd say is, even if that happens, don't bear grudges. Go in the next day. It's a different day. Don't be like, you gave me shit at the hot plate yesterday, I'm going to be a twat to you all day today. Because, you know, you've just, everyone's got to get out of those doors, and everyone's got to get out that front gate one day mentally healthy. And that's the staff and the prisoners. Because the people that we're releasing from the prisons, if you brutalise them and you treat them like crap and you talk to them like crap and you think that's cool, then crack on. Because these people are going to be released and living in your neighbourhood. And I'm not saying that as a threat. I'm saying you don't want to be part of some factory that damages people and then kicks them out the door. You can make the job what you want. You can be decent, and I did learn to be decent, and I got through the rest of my career sound, and I still bump into people, like I was saying to Cody before the interview started. I bump into people and they're like, "Hey, all right, Gov, how you doing? What you doing now?" A lot of them don't even realise I've left the service because I hadn't seen them, you know, seen them on and off every now and again. But yeah, you can be what you want to be, but I would say be a decent person and find someone that you respect. If you're an inexperienced officer, and have a goal, have an ambition. You know, everyone says, "Oh, it's a shit job, it's a dead end job." You know, everyone wants to leave. A lot of people do want to leave, but the job's what you make it. Sorry, bit of a speech there.
No. I love that. I love that. Because like I said, people are like, I get people contacting me like, "Cody, if I go to prison, as a prisoner, how do I act?" And it's like, I just tell them the same thing: don't borrow, don't steal. If you like, and then they'll say to you like, "Cody, I'm not a fighter, but if someone drops it on my toes," I said, I know it's going to sound very short-ended, but if you don't fight, you're going to get battered. And if you don't fight, you're going to get battered. You could become a victim, bully victim. And if you do fight, the worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to get beat. But it's not in their mindset. With prisoners, as the prisoners that you came across, there are the personalities are all different and stuff. Some of them should, in my opinion, how many prisoners? Do you believe there are a lot of prisoners in the system that should actually be in psychiatric units and things like that?
Yeah. I think they said last time I actually looked, which was a while ago, that if you were to take the entire prisoner population, something like 60% would have some kind of either, and I'm not a psychiatrist or anything, so if I'm saying something incorrect and someone watches this who knows better than me, forgive me, but I'm sure I read that 60% either would have a psychiatric diagnosis if there was assessed, or a personality disorder of some type. And that's really important to remember if you're going in as an officer, because you'll see, like, I don't know how it is these days, but loads of people in maroon or grey tracksuits, they're still people, and you've got, you know, you have to think about that. And I always used to say, like, what I give out is what I get. So if you're coming at me with a bad attitude, you'll get one back. But if you're not well and you're not thinking right and your thoughts are disordered, then it's not right to the correct response to that isn't to jump on your head and bend you up. You know, you've got to try and work with these people and accept that, you know, a lot of people in prison, they've been through the care system as well. And you don't know what's happened in their life. You know, you don't know why that person is in prison necessarily. I mean, sometimes you do, obviously, or why they behave in the way they are.
When it comes to the care system, I don't know if it's your opinion. I've got my own opinion, and I believe it is. There is definitely a correlation between people that grown up in care and care leavers and those that end up in prison. It seems to be unfortunately, seems to be a natural progression. Care system, because the thing is, what I say, Joe, when it comes to offenders, not all offenders, I want to make this point, is for most offenders, before they've ever been offenders, they've first been victims. They've been sexually abused, physically abused, emotionally abused. Parents were addicts. They've had the worst starts in life. And then you've got these people that have just been abandoned, grown up for whatever reason it might be. They grow up in the care system, being passed from pillar to post. Back in the day, sexual abuse seemed to go hand in hand with people that were in care, and then they leave the care system, and it seems to be a natural progression where they end up in prison, sadly and unfortunately.
Yeah, statistically, yeah, you bang on. That's pretty much a proven fact. I don't know what the percentage is, but it's way more higher than the percentage of general population that it should be. So yeah, I mean, a lot of the prisoners that I knew back in Wandsworth, the guys in their 50s and 60s had been through care, then into Borstal, and through the whole system, you know, and it messed them up. Obviously, you know, some people come up through the system and it's done them well, but we don't hear about those ones. But as a prison officer, you'll be dealing with a lot of people who have been through the care system. They've been in and out of institutions, secure units, you know, supported residential places for young people who have got problems. So yeah, try to take that superiority hat off that you might have because you've had a nice, easy life and you've applied for your job, and you know, just treat people like a human.
So in that 12 months where you said, in your words, you was being a prick because you probably didn't know how to act. You've been given this job, you was in this position, and like I said, you've got your personality on the outside, and then you become an officer, and it's like you've got to redevelop your personality from the ground up because you don't know how to. Like some officers, they've got that mindset they're going to be a bastard. It sounds like you was like you said, you looked up to a SO at Wandsworth and you was mirroring their actions. So in that 12 months that you was being, in your words, a prick, how was you treated by the prisoners? Were you targeted, for example?
Yeah. No, I was not targeted to be like beaten up or potted or anything, which for anyone who doesn't know is where you get a jug of piss thrown over you or shit. I wasn't targeted in that way, but the guys on the wing, they had no respect for me. They knew I was basically being a little prick, and if it wasn't for my big mates behind me, I wouldn't be able to be all that. So there was no respect from them, and when people don't respect you, they won't do things for you. So you've created a vicious circle where you actually make your job harder every day.
And then, because the thing is, I've definitely, I think you'll agree with me with this. There are certain officers that do the job that, and I don't want to, I'm not trying to focus, not all officers are bad. Trust me, I've met some amazing ones. And if we was on the out, we'd be friends.
Totally.
But there were certain, with these officers, that what annoys me with certain officers, the dickheads with the lads, not all of them, but the being dickheads with the lads are antagonizing them behind the door, right? But if it was on the outside and they bumped into each other, the officer that's being a prick certainly wouldn't be a prick to this person on the out, because the person would just absolutely smash that officer. I don't like those officers. What I'm trying to say is, like you said, officers are normally living in the areas that they're working for the most part. For the most part, right, in the same, whether it's in the same county, whatever. Now, the way that you treat these prisoners could come back and bite you in the arse if you do have a bully mindset as an officer. Because how many prisoners? What I'm trying to say is that you might bump into prisoners on the out that you've twisted up, or you've been you've wound them up when they've been in the, and then you're on the outside and you don't have you're not in control of the situation. I'm trying to say, how many prisoners, when you've been in the local area and out and about, how many prisoners over the years have you bumped into that you used to lock up?
Loads, absolutely loads. There was, there's loads where I live now, and funnily enough, the last time I'd left Wandsworth, and like I said, I was at Wandsworth for a few years, and I stopped being a dick, and you know, became what was generally regarded as, you know, fairly decent screw, a sound officer. And I was walking up Wandsworth High Street with my cousin. I went to collect him. He was coming down from Manchester to stay with us for a while. And we're walking down the street, and this big car with blacked out windows comes racing up to the curb. And the windows have come down. It's a totally true story. And my cousin, he's obsessed with like gangsters. He loves all that. And this car pulled up, and the windows come down, and he's like, no word of a lie, there's like 5 black guys in this big car. And the window come down, and literally one guy, he leaned out the window, and he just went, and I'm sorry, he just went, "Yo, Mr. Wandsworth, man," and then that gave us like a high five and drove off. And my cousin was like wetting himself. He thought it was brilliant. But yeah, that's just a funny story. But you know, you meet people on the out. Now imagine that and I say it's a funny story, but actually thinking about it, imagine that car of 5 guys. If I was a prick, what could have happened?
100%. And the thing is, with a lot of officers, like I said, when I do these things, I always try to balance it, because, like I said, there are prisoners in the system that believe it's, when it comes to life on the wing, it's an us, as in prisoners, versus them, prison officers. And I think that's a lot of prisoners that are hardcore. They've got that mindset where it is us versus them. Where when I first went to Strangeways, when I was on remand with Noonan on this witness intimidation, because I was a hardened criminal, I'd never been to prison, but I was I've been involved with crime for a long time. So when I've ended up in the prison, I had that mindset, I'm going to be honest, of it's us versus them. So I found myself speaking to the officers like shit. Not all the time, but I had that edge about me where I'm like, fuck them, it's us and them. But then as I ended up on my second stretch, and then finally my third stretch, I realised, having worked as a wing cleaner, I became to almost, not with all officers, but respect their job. I understood it because I was unlocked Monday to Friday, about 14.5 hours of the day. And when you see, when you're locked up and your flaps closed, and you don't see, you might see the assaults on the wing and blah blah blah, but you don't see how they operate when people are locked up. You don't see the slashings, the self-harm, things like that. So I became to admire. There was a senior officer, right? I won't name him, but there's a senior officer at Forest Bank, and there'd been a suicide. Oh, it wasn't a suicide, sorry, an overdose. The kid died, God bless him, right? Darren Rawlinson, on a wing adjacent to ours. RSO, because obviously the cutbacks and stuff, where you used to have like a senior officer floating between a wing, it was now covering like 4 wings. It was covering 4 wings. And he'd worked on this guy, like literally trying to save this kid's life till paramedics arrived, and then unfortunately was pronounced dead. And I walked into I think one of the officers was doing an app book, another officer was on the bog, and I've gone to the office, right? And everyone else was unlocked. Everyone else was locked up. We was cleaners, we was unlocked. Gone down to the office to ask for something, and he's crying his eyes out. And this guy had lost his mother 6 weeks before, and then this suicide thing just took him backwards. And when I saw this man crying over the death of a prisoner, it might have been a bit to do with his mum, obviously, as well. But I looked and I thought, you know what? Human beings, man. Human beings. And this officer, this senior officer, was such a nice person. And this is the thing. There are good and bad in every society. And we all have to coexist. When we're on the wing, we all have to coexist. But the thing is, these officers that have got this negative mindset and this bully boy attitude and things like that, it angers me, because it's like these prisoners, we've committed crimes, but everyone's made mistakes. Some people are quick to judge your decisions, but they don't know the decisions you've had or that have been impacted with negative things in your life. Then there's some people that are out and out. There's prisoners that are out and out, just violent, dangerous, that have not been through bad things, are just bad people, whether it be mental health, whatever the case may be. But it's just it's crazy, man. So when it comes to what are the different roles of prison officers? I'm interested to know.
There's loads, and that's the thing. If you want to, if you want to make a career of it, there's loads of different things you can do. You'll start off on your wing normally. When you're new, you'll start off on a wing, learning what they call your jail craft, which I would say that part of it is the period where you learn not to be a dick, and you learn to deal with people, and basically everybody gets through their day in one piece and relatively mentally intact. That's your jail craft. And you learn to, you sort of got to find your feet. You learn to pick up on the signs of trouble. You learn to pick up on prisoners who are struggling, who might need support, might need help, So your first year is a lot of learning, a lot of getting your head around everything. You'll make mistakes. You'll unlock someone because they've told you, Gov, I should be over here, and actually you've just been bullshitted, and now they're running around the wing. You'll mess up. You totally will. And then you might, like you say, you might get put as cleaning officer, which when I first got it, I was like, does that mean I've got to clean the wing? And it was like, no, you're in charge of the party of orderlies, and that's actually a really sound job. It's a good sort of first step, because that was kind of, I think, actually, Cody, that might be when I stopped being a bit of a prat, because I had to actually work with people all day, I'll go over to the kitchens, collect the grub, bring it back. And in those days we used to have to drag a big urn around the landings at like 7 o'clock as well, which was stone cold by the time it got to the floors. So then, if you want to specialize, you can become a PEI, if you're into fitness and everything. That's a great job, because you basically got access to a gym for 12 hours a day, 40 hours a week. And you'll get to really know your gym orderlies. And gym orderlies run the prison, really, let's be honest. If they tell another prisoner he ain't going to the gym, that's way more effective than one of the screws saying it. So
if you're as well, the guys are normally big. There's a guy down at Forest Bank. I won't name him, but everyone knows him. He's safe as houses, this guy. But if you cross him, they'll come unstuck. But the guy's he's an absolute unit and stuff like that. But gym is definitely gym orderlies are all right. So what I'm trying to get to is, some people that are thinking of joining the service, they don't know anything about prisons, and they want to become an officer. And what I'm trying to get to is, you're not just on a wing unlocking people. There are other roles that you can do as a prison officer, and that's what I want you to go into.
No worries. Right, so there is your basic wing work. You're unlocking, locking, association, canteen, phone calls. That's like your bread and butter. But you can specialise. You can become a prison PEI, which is an exercise officer. Quite tough to get into. If office work's your thing, you can go into like offender management unit, which is dealing with like prisoners' applications to be categorised as like to move up to a CCAT, or their applications to go DCAT or be released on temporary licence. You can live in an office as a prison officer if you want to, if that's your thing. There's promotion, obviously. You go up through the ranks. A few of my old mates now are governors. So there's promotion possibilities. There's things you can do which aren't really your main job, but like you can join the national like tornado teams, which every prison has officers who are trained at a higher level in control and restraint, and they go off to like disturbances within their region. You can do that. That can be, if you're one of the really like determined and lucky ones, you can then go on to a full-time job in the National Tactical Response Group, which is really like basically like throwing around flashbangs and messing around with water cannons and teaching CNR courses to officers, and being like the tactical planners when there's big disturbances, riots, things like Birmingham a couple of years ago. So you can do anything you want within the job. And that's the thing I want to say is, most prison officers you'll speak to, me included, I'll be like, oh, no, it's not the job. That's not a great job. It's a job. It's a job what you make it. And if you are happy, I know people who've been cleaning officer for 20 years, happy as Larry. They go in, they unlock their lads in the morning, they have a banging day, bacon and eggs cooked in the morning, go pot around, do their stuff, clean the gullies, and they're happy as a sandboy. So the job's what you make it. And
when it comes to being security, how is there a criteria for that, or is it just a case of you put your name forward, and if you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't. Or do you have to have a certain amount of experience behind you just to get on security?
Yeah, security. People probably. I'll just say for people who don't know what security is, it's.
Sorry, I should have explained. Sorry, go on.
That's all right. Security doesn't mean like it does out here, which is, you know, like doors and, you know, door work, that kind of. In a prison, a security department is where they monitor intelligence through written reports that officers submit about things that they've seen, heard, the mood on the wing. It's the place where sometimes if prisoners are having their mail read, their mail will be read, phone screening. And they're also, it's normally security are responsible for doing like targeted cell searches. So if there's a rumor going around that someone's got a big blade on D-wing, security will be the ones who will sweep in, grab that. We used to go around in Wandsworth, like targeting mobile phones. And the other thing security do, which people don't realise, is a lot of the general radio ops. You'll be up in the control room of the prison, which is actually really interesting because you're responsible for the moves around the jail. So officer who wants to take a party, maybe a party of like sex offenders across a yard. If you're in the control room, you've got to make sure that that party doesn't cross a party of prisoners from the main, things like that. So security is really interesting, actually. And yeah, Cody's right. You need a bit of time under your belt really to apply for that. But yeah, normally prison officers rotate around the wings and around various jobs. So when I was there, you used to get 3 choices, like where do you want to go in your next rotation? So you'd put like security, B wing, offender management unit, and you just got what came out of the hat, really.
Is it so when you're an officer, is it trying to, obviously everyone's going to be different, right? But is it a case of like, if you get, once they start on the wing, it's like try and get as much experience as quickly as you can doing other things to find your niche within the prison as an officer? Or is it just a case of like start on the wing and then you just progress? What would you advise people if they're able to get around and do a bit with the offender management unit, and then a bit, like you said, like maybe like operational support grade or office work, admin? So is it just a case of trying to get as much experience as quickly as you can, or is it just a case of slowly progress?
Yeah, I'd say get as much, you know, go around all these departments. A lot of prisons as well, they have like, generally it's quite a small wing, which is like the rehab.
Yeah.
Detox unit, that they're quite interesting. And you've got a lot of civvy staff, which are, you know, non-officer staff, who come in and facilitate like NACRO and organisations like that work with prisoners with like drug, substance, alcohol issues. So it's always good to get a bit of time on that. Spend some time on an induction wing as well, because that's where you're seeing prisoners who've literally just come in off the street. Some of them will have been in thousands of times, but you will be seeing people who it's their first stretch inside. But I wouldn't say rush around trying to get these things. Just let it happen organically. If you're on a wing for a year, you're on a wing for a year. If you spend 6 months in offender management and decide you hate it, you go out, go do something else. Just move around the service, get as much experience of it.
Again, we touched on this before you came on. So can you just explain what an operational support grade is?
Yeah. So an operational support grade is not a prison officer, in that they are responsible for sort of dealing with prisoners, but they don't have the same like legal powers and things that a prison officer does. When I was in the job, and I could be well out of date now, so if I'm wrong, I'm sorry. The operational support grade was considered like a non-prisoner facing role. So you'd be, for example, in the prison's gate lodge, you know, issuing keys to the staff coming in and out. Office operational support grades often work up in the control room, actually, with an officer, doing the radio, doing the comms, watching the security monitors, running workshops. But yeah, the key difference is an operational support grade is not an officer, because they don't have the same legal powers, and they don't go through the training that an officer has. And yeah, I think, like I said before the video began, I kind of explain it to people as like, if you think of the prison officer is like the policeman, an operational support grade is like the PCSO, sort of like, you know, still doing the job, still out there, still ears and eyes on the ground, but maybe not with all of the legal powers they need to do.
Can you join as an operational support grade, or is it like you said, it's something you do towards for many people, it's something you do towards the back end, as the back end of your career, or can you start as an OSG?
Yeah, you can totally start as an OSG. Jobs are in the papers, job centres. It's actually a good way if you want to be, if you say 22, 23, start as an OSG, become an officer. That's quite a common route. But you still have to apply for the officer and go and do the training course. And the other thing, like Cody just said, is towards the end of your career, if you do manage to last your 25 years or whatever, when you are not wanting to be on the wing all day, every day, sometimes rolling around the floor with people, you can step down to OSG. And quite a lot of officers who are close to retirement decide that they've had enough of the wings and they step down to OSG and ride out their time that way.
What do officers do that are on GDs, general duties? What's the role? I spoke to quite a few officers that are still in the service, and they just say, "Oh, I'm just on general duties," and I'm like, "What's the role of general duties? Like, what sort of things can you find yourself doing?"
Yeah, I'm guessing we never use that term really. It's the first time I've heard it, but I imagine it's your bread and butter, which is you come in the morning, you'll get allocated to your landing. 8 o'clock comes round, you probably have to unlock guys who are going to education, guys who are going to workshops, get them off to their education workshops. So general duties, I think, is running the wing on a day-to-day basis. Get everyone off to workshops.
Yeah. What I was going to say is, you know, when it comes to ACTS books, access, custody, care and teamwork books, mental health books, guys, what I'm interested to know, Joe, is are the officers that sit down with prisoners with ACT books, have they received any training at all when it comes to the mental health side of things? Because in my opinion, they haven't, but you'll know better than I will.
Yeah, all prison officers have been sent on, like, you know, you have to go on, it's part of the initial course, and there are like refresher courses in mental health awareness, suicide awareness and prevention. Some people actually, Cody, like you say about developing your career, become the prison suicide prevention officer, and they're responsible for like staff training, monitoring compliance with the ACT documents. You know, we've all heard stories of people writing, you know, asleep on left side.
Do those mental health courses? I'm going to be honest, because I've got a big issue with prison suicide. I've spoken to countless families that have suffered bereavement through a loved one being in prison, that have sadly, tragically taken their own life. Is it just a case of, right, you've got to do the course for this mental health side of things, but it doesn't seem to work because most of these officers, they know what you're in for. They might, it's on the P-nomis, they got mental blah blah blah, but when you're on the wing and you've got that many prisoners and stuff like that, and obviously the cuts and everything, and there's less officers on the wings, like they slip through the net. So do you think that what I'm trying to say to you, does the mental health side of things, like from officers, the training they've done, or the course, is it any good? Is it worth the paper it's written on? Sort of the knowledge.
No, and like I can only speak for when I was in the job. No, it was. It was paying lip service to it. It was so a governor could say our officers have had mental health training. You're absolutely right. When you've got patrol state, which for people who don't know is when the wing's banged up and you've just got one officer on the wing answering call bells, you can't give mental health support to the 10 or 15 people on your wing who might need that right then. So yeah, you're absolutely right. It's inadequate. Mental health services in prison are just inadequate completely. What have been your experiences with mentally ill prisoners? Obviously, you've alluded to your cold blues, suicides, and things like that. But what are your experiences of prisoners with mental health that you've come across, you've witnessed,
things like that. I'm just interested to know. I'm trying to. Mental health's a big thing for me, and so is the suicide side of things as well.
It's tough. It's tough because the vast majority of prisoners with mental health issues are not in the healthcare wing, so they're out in the general prison population. So you can't support them. They're often not getting access to I don't think I've ever took a prisoner out for like an outpatient psychiatry appointment or anything. Don't think I've done that in 13 years in the job. It seems to be a case that, from my experience, as I say, and I'm sure people are different, is it's all bubbling along under the surface on the general population. And by the time you actually hit being put on healthcare, you're in a bad way generally. Healthcare is like, it's generally only about 10 cells of the prison anyway on healthcare, so it can't support the population. And yeah, it's tough. It's really tough because people are struggling, and that there's not enough of you guys, officers that is, and there's not enough support. There's great organisations coming in from Civvy Street to help, but it's putting elastoplast on an amputated leg, really, isn't it?
1000%. So, but with mentally ill prisoners, what are your experiences like? Whether it be someone writing "help me" in their own shit on the wall, or slashing up, or what are your experiences with mentally ill prisoners that you can talk about, that you're willing to talk about, if any at all?
That's a tough one, that, because
there's been so many.
It runs the entire spectrum from people who are sort of depressed and just behind the door all day.
Significant mental health, and the one that the higher.
Yeah, I mean, I've dealt with a lot of that because I did a 6-month stint as the healthcare officer. So yeah, it's meant for an officer. It can be really quite difficult to deal with because you can't solve it. I mean, I've had guys on the healthcare, as you say, stripped off, covered in their own feces, writing on the walls. I've had guys naked running around the exercise yard, refusing. This was back when we've, for some daft reason, had a tree in the middle of the exercise yard, up the tree, refusing to come down. I've had and seen it all in that sense, and there's nothing you can do, and that's really frustrating. It's all you end up doing is dealing with not the problem, you end up dealing with the behaviour, which quite often isn't the right solution, because you'll end up when someone's finally lost it completely and they've torn everything out of their cell, they're smashing it to pieces. You'll end up going in with a shield and a 3-man team and dragging them out, and that's not mental health treatment, is it? That's just dealing with the aftermath without addressing the problem. So yeah, a lot of time on healthcare, you're dealing with the disordered behaviour. You're not actually helping anybody.
So, if someone was thinking of becoming a prison officer, I asked Neil Sam this, and I sent him 2 questions, but it was very similar. Now, I asked, what would you say to people considering, to take into account before becoming a prison officer? Whether it's I don't know, what is your advice to people that are thinking of becoming a prison officer? Things to take into account and things like that.
Yeah, I can do that.
Before they apply, things to take into consideration.
Okay, yeah, no, that's a really good question. I can totally address that. The first thing I would say is apply. It can be a great job, but it's a job, as we've addressed, and I won't keep going over it. The job's how you make it. It will affect you. It might affect you mentally. It might affect your physical health. Be aware that you might fall into patterns like drinking too much to forget to recover from your shifts, and these are things I imagine in a lot of public sector and uniform jobs anyway. So be aware that who you are in there is not, you shouldn't try not to bring that home with you. I mean, if you're a decent bloke in there, then great, be a decent bloke out of there. But, you know, don't bring the prison back into your house and affect your wife and your kids with it. Talk to people. Be aware that, you know, you're not actually, we all smell if we don't wipe. You're not better than anybody who's the other side of the door. And that's really important to remember, you know. Just because you're being given a uniform and a nice big extendable baton and stuff, it doesn't change the fact that we're all people. And as I've said earlier, so I don't need to go over it again, you've all got to spend 12 hours a day behind those gates with each other. Yeah, so my advice would be go for it. If you really want to do it, but go for it for the right reasons. If you think you're going to go in there and you're going to strut around and be Billy Big Bollocks, then don't put your application form in. You know, do everyone a favour. If you're going to go, and the flip side of that, don't go in thinking you're going to change the world. Don't be like, you know, a complete bleeding heart, because you'll get eaten alive and you'll just end up disillusioned. You know, just try and be a straight up guy or girl. You know, treat people fairly. Some people won't respond to it, which we spoke about, but the majority will. Like I say, I've got through my career. You know, I've been assaulted and everything, but I've never been seriously like weighed in. Bump into people outside who I've banged up. Never had any drama at all. So yeah, just remember you're a human, they're a human. It's a job, and go for it if you fancy it. What's the worst that can happen?
And what advice would you give to someone that they've weighed up what you've just said, they're applying to be an officer, when it comes to pull, things like that, just so they've got so they can hit the ground running? Like you said, this is the thing with the question, it annoys me because I'm the one that's asked the question, like things to consider before becoming an officer, but then if you're going to become an officer, like just when it comes to pull and things like that, is there anywhere they can go, like they can find advice about what it entails, or just how to conduct themselves when they're on pull? And do you know what, ignore that question because it's mirrored by what you've just said. So when it comes to 12 weeks training, right, I look at Norway's model, right? When it comes to officers in Norway, I believe it's 2 years before they actually qualify. Now here it's 12 weeks. You've already alluded to, well, you've not answered this question, but is 12 weeks enough to fully prepare you in any capacity for life on the landings?
No, not even slightly. Think of your POELT training. If you know you've got a place and you're starting in like 3 weeks, 3 months, whatever, don't sit and try and learn prison service instructions and prison service orders. Just clear your head, go in with a fresh head. Don't take it home with you. Enjoy the training because it's a laugh at times. It's a really good laugh. Learning to sort of search large areas, learning to search cells, people, learning the laws and everything that govern how prisons are run, learning your control restraint. It's actually great fun if you go at it with the right head on. I remember a simulation where I reported over the radio that I'd found a dead body that was breathing. So yeah, I got the piss ripped out of me for that. So yeah, the training's a good laugh, but think of it like your driving test. You're not a good driver when you pass your driving test. You're not a good officer because you've finished your POELT training. You learn on the landing.
Do you know what? I like I said, I've not done POELT, but I just always in my head. Obviously, your insight's a lot more, 100% better than mine because we've not done POELT and things. We're just on that other side of the door. But the thing is, like, so when it comes to suicides and things like that, how much do they dedicate towards mental health in POELT and also prison suicides in POELT? Is it? I can only imagine it's only a fraction, or is it more than a fraction?
Well, bearing in mind we're going back 16 years or so when I did mine, it wasn't a big thing. Then it was pretty much it didn't used to be called an act. It was a 2052 SH back when I did it. 2052 is the code of the form, and SH was for self-harm. So the act document used to be called 2052 SH, and the training was literally like, here's how to fill in a 2052 SH or an act document. And a bit of suicide awareness, like which didn't really go any deeper than watching out for, like, if someone suddenly starts giving all their belongings away, or if they suddenly withdraw from all their. It didn't go much deeper than that. You could have they probably covered it in like an afternoon.
Yeah, it's like, see, the mental health side of things is mental health services. What are your opinions on healthcare within prison? I'm talking for prisoners, and also mental health services for prisoners within the prison.
I actually found that when I was.
Go on. The reason I'm asking you is because, like you said, you was in charge of healthcare for a time, but like you said,
no, I wasn't in charge. I was an officer on healthcare.
Sorry, an officer on healthcare. But like you said, most of them are they're just in general population on the wings. So I'm just in your opinion about healthcare and mental health services for prisoners within the prison.
I think the general healthcare I've known it to be really good in places and at certain points in time, and really bad. I would say when I was at Lewis, the healthcare, certainly the physical healthcare, was pretty good. And they employed nurses, and we had visiting GPs and clinics. And the mental health care, they did employ RMNs on the healthcare unit. That's registered mental health nurses, for anyone who don't know. And it was pretty decent, actually. It was a decent unit in that respect. And the flip side is I've seen healthcare go really bad. I remember a brief period, I think it was Wandsworth, don't quote me, when it got privatised, and it was shit. So, yeah, I couldn't say. You might have, and it could be what prison you're at. You might have a prison that's got the most fantastic healthcare, and someone else might be working or banged up in a prison that's got appalling healthcare. Can't really say.
How many? I can't remember what you said the abbreviation was but with the app books, how many have you done yourself? Countless ones. But what is 100. I've never sat down and done an app book, right? But when they sat down and they've got your file and they sat down, it's a prison officer that sat there talking to you. What's on the app book? What is the makeup of the form and stuff, and what sort of questions do you ask?
So you've got your initial act assessment, which is meant to be carried out by a trained act assessor. So they've had more training. They've actually put themselves forward for that role. They're still prison officer, but they've gone and done extra training. So the first assessment should be with an act assessor who decides what your level of risk is, and explores the problems, the issues, maybe your mental health diagnosis or what have you. So that's the key. You've got to have an act assessment for the document to be valid. And then you have regular act reviews, which are also carried out by your assessor. But for an officer on the landing, a hell of a lot of the act form when I was there was literally like prisoner in cell writing a letter, prisoner on bed lying on left side. And it's not a suicide watch. That's not the right term for it, but a lot of it is just sitting there and recording, which is basically to prove that you've been watching them. It's not anymore.
So when you was in, how did the job change year to year? I mean, obviously, I don't know if the cuts had taken place then, because obviously the prison service had been decimated, just like a lot of youth services and across the country, and it's massively impacted prison officers. I think I think a few years ago they said that we've lost. I did an interview with Mark Fairhurst. Mark Fairhurst is now the acting chair of the Prison Officers Association, and he said we've lost over 7,000 experienced officers, and we've replaced them. This was, I think, after you left. They replaced them with like 3,300 and something, like young, fresh-faced, wet behind the ears officers. So, how did the job change year to year? I don't mean in the role. I mean, like the service, the cuts, that's what I'm trying to get.
Yeah, totally with you there. When I first started, the staffing levels felt safe, and they were safe for prisoners. Because and safe for officers, because if there's not enough officers to keep order in a prison, it's prisoners that end up in danger as well. You've got gangs running riot and taxing people on the wing and stuff, and it becomes unsafe. When I was at Wandsworth, the staffing was a principal officer, senior officer, 2 officers on every landing. So that's 10 officers on a wing. By the time I left, they brought in what they called workforce modernisation, or WFM, which was basically a cost-cutting exercise. An outside consultancy came in, looked at the activity, did all sorts of time and motion studies, and these are all people who've never worked as officers, never, you know. Well, you can do this activity with half the staff. And they just started cutting and cutting. And it wasn't redundancies, but people left and they weren't replaced, and they left and they weren't replaced. Then they decided a wing could have 1 officer on a landing, or they decided that a wing didn't need a principal officer anymore. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. The service, the staffing got decimated, which has made prisons less safe for everybody, whichever side of the door. I think by the time I left Lewis, we were running sometimes with 3 officers on a wing and trying to run an association. And it's not safe. You know, someone could be getting weighed in the showers, and what can I do about that with 3 officers and 120 prisoners unlocked? So yeah, you're spot on. Yeah.
So due to them cuts, I'm assuming there's a lot of officers, not all officers, but some officers, well, that must feel unsafe doing, like you said, 120 officers, three. You become reliant on your panic button, surely.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other flip side of it as well is it becomes more dangerous because you're less able or willing or feel safe to challenge things. So a lot more bad stuff goes on when there's not enough officers to supervise. As much as prisoners think officers are just there to give them our time and put them behind the door, without the officers there, the place would descend into carnage. And you know, you find that you might end up turning a blind eye to stuff because you know that there's not enough of you on the wing, and is this really the fight to pick tonight? You know what I mean? Yeah, it's made prison harder for prisoners and officers.
Prison officers. 1,000%. I was just about to say 1,000%. So when you became a senior officer, is it just like, right, you're becoming a senior officer, and put you forward and that's it? Or you made reference to a course before. I think you said you've got to do some sort of course to get your SO to become a senior officer.
Yeah, I don't think I don't know how it works anymore, but back in the day, you had to apply to sit the senior officer's exam. Yeah. Which that application had to be backed by your governor as well, as in the number 1 governor. Yeah. So if you didn't have enough time, or you were a bit of a knob, they could not back you for the exam. And the exam was quite hard, actually. It was about dealing with scenarios, and you know, you've got X, Y, and Z numbers of staff. This has got to happen. The other wings refusing to bang up. That kind of situation.
Like prioritizing sort of things. Like sounds like you're saying prioritize scenarios and more in depth.
Totally. Yeah, and then if you passed the exam, you went on to another like assessment center, which was really similar to the one I described earlier, but the scenarios were more management based, as you know, prison based. So yeah, back when I became an SO, it was a thing, if that makes sense. You know, it was hard to get, and I don't know if that's true anymore.
So when you're a senior officer, how does your role differ from that of just a normal prison officer? Obviously, it's more management, more responsibility.
Yeah, and supervising as well. So you would go in the morning. Let's say you've got your 2 staff for each landing. You'd be like, right, Bloggs and Smith, you're on the 1s. You're on, you know, you 2 are on the 2s. Yada yada yada. And a lot of it was being out on the landing. Some senior officers would spend their entire day in the office and never come out. Other officers would be out on the landing, supporting their staff, dealing with troubleshooting problems, and stuff like that. A lot of it was paperwork as well, and dealing with bullshit from above.
Do you think that as a officer or a senior officer, and you're involved in an altercation, do you get the support from senior management from the top?
Do you know what? I might surprise you. Sorry about that. I might surprise you with this answer, but yeah, bearing in mind I've left before what we might call the modern prison service.
Yeah.
I did find that the good governors and the good principal officers were fair, and in being fair, they had your back as well. I never felt that, you know, and whenever I've had a bend up or anything, or I'd had to use my baton or anything, of course I was questioned about it and had to fill in paperwork. You always had to. But I never felt that people were out to catch me out on decisions that I'd made. And I also felt that when it came to like nickings, adjudications, back then, the governors were fair as well a lot of the time to the prisoners. So no,
Yeah.
I don't feel I felt unsupported.
Do you know what? I've had it where I remember there was a story. I can't remember the full ins and outs at Strangeways, and two officers were left high. They'd been involved in an altercation. I think excessive force was something to do with the wording, and they got no support from the top. Obviously, each prison has got a different governor, and obviously that depends. We've all got different personalities, but they felt left high and dry, and I think they both ended up leaving the service. And the guy contacted me, and then he all of a sudden, because I wanted to get him on the channel, and he stopped corresponding with me, which I completely understand. But yeah, it's a lot. Again, it must. So was that the same when you was in Lewis and also Wandsworth? You felt supported from like the senior management.
The last governor I worked under, I'm sure he won't mind me mentioning his name, was Robin Eldridge at Lewis, and he was absolutely superb. Prisoners, he had all the time in the world for them. They had all the time in the world for him. Staff, he had your back. He knew everybody by name. Cracking guy, just fantastic governor. And a governor can make or break a jail, because I've heard the exact opposite from other places. I'm not going to name names.
Yeah, of course, 1,000%. So this is when you was at the SO, and then obviously I don't know if you. How did you become a tornado squad? Did that again just another progression, or something that interested you, or?
It interested me, and I think that was just a case of badgering the tornado coordinator to get me a place on the course, until he finally got sick of me and put me on the course. And
how long the course to be a tornado squad officer?
I think it were 2 weeks, two lots of 5 days. You go away, and that is residential. You get put up in accommodation, and you spend sort of 2 weeks learning. You don't learn any new CNR. You learn how to like cover areas, so how to take back an exercise yard if it's been, if you've got people refusing to come off an exercise yard, how to take down barricades if it's a proper full-on riot and the doors are barricaded and everything. It's a good course. A lot of fitness. Every time someone messed up, we were made to run laps of the hangar. Basically, it's tearing up an aircraft hangar for 2 weeks.
So it's what you see when you see going in with the shields and throwing like blocks of wood and stuff, and then you'll have like somebody. You'll have your point man with a shield, and then behind him you've got someone that goes over. So if anything comes from above, because they was throwing blocks from angles and stuff, like from a second landing down, and it was like riot shields and stuff like that. So it must have been. I would actually, even though as an ex-con I'll never be able to do it, I'd love to do. I would definitely. That's the course that I would definitely want to jump on. It sounds. I like the thought of because it's a game of, like you said, it's tactical. It's all tactical, and it's like, Do you enjoy it? How many situations did you get involved in as a tornado? How long was you a tornado officer, and how many incidents did you come across like that you was called out to use?
I was on one for a few years, but hardly ever got called out to anything that ever amounted to anything. You quite often, more often than not, the tornadoes. I mean, the big riots and stuff. I'm not going to lie, I never got called out to any sort of big, what you might call juicy riot. But a lot of the times when you had a situation in your own prison, the governor or whoever, the Oscar one, the orderly officer, did look for the tornado trained staff first. So you find that you're actually doing a lot more of normal things that everyone's trained to do, but in your own prison. So you know, cell extractions, people refusing to come out, people tooled up in a cell. They'd always go, you know, right, what tornado officers have we got on duty? Who's CNR advanced trained? So you'd find you'd get pulled into a lot more of that in your own prison route. Not so much the rearing around the country in a van.
Yeah. So when you see like Winchester, there was a riot down. Well, yeah, they took over the wing, didn't they? Birmingham was probably the biggest one in recent years. So you must have looked. So you would have been called upon to go for that.
Yeah, I mean, Birmingham happened when I was out of the service, actually.
Yeah, I know, that's what I mean. So you'd left, but when you saw that, if you were still in the job, you would have probably been called upon. Yeah,
totally. Yeah, because they were pulling units as far as down south for Birmingham because it was so big. And I remember what I was following it all on Twitter that night, actually, what was going on. And I'm not going to lie, I had a few sort of pangs. I was like, just give me my kit, give me a van, get me there.
Because you know what, it went in. Because the thing is, there was somebody that was in the prison that was sending me footage from inside the jail and everything, and it looked like it was a hell of a. I don't know how was they just nationally? They would have said, right, we need as many like tornado NCRGs, get them all. Like they would have called upon everyone.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I know that they were calling units out from as far as like Wandsworth, Lewis, and you know, because if it goes on for days, you've got to replenish those officers. They've got, you know, so yeah. I was watching that one thinking, oh, give me my kit back.
Just love to jump on it. So the thing is, right, the one thing, right, so like you've got the National Tactical Response Group officers and everything. They're like this. They are specialist officers, aren't they? At the end of the day, like you. So did you get to play with flashbangs and stuff like that, or was that you didn't get to that level with the flashbangs and?
No. We got to play with them on our tornado course, but in real life, if anything like that gets used, it's those guys that are using it.
Yeah. So how more in depth is the NCRG training? I know you didn't do it, so you probably can't. You might not even be able to answer.
No, I've known people who've been NCRG, and their training's intense. They have done normally they've done CNR Advanced, which is tornado. Then they've become an CNR instructor, and out of that pool of CNR instructors is the lucky buggers who get to go to NCRG. They train at loads of absolutely mental stuff, like taking doors out with thermal lances, fast roping down buildings. Their training takes place, a lot of it's from like units like the SAS and the military train. I was just
about to say it's like the SAS of prison officers. It really is.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and that's their training with those guys.
I'm interested to know, right? So this is like a two-part question. So when you are an officer, I don't know if you have to buy into this. I don't know if it's just a thing. The Prison Officers Association, is it like a unison? Is it like I'm assuming it is. So do you have to? Is it a choice? Is it a choice to join them?
Yes. So it's a trade union, and it's totally your choice to join.
What are your opinions on? Was you a member of the Prison Officers Association, the POA?
Yeah, I was.
And was it worthwhile? Like, what were your experiences with the POA? Did you have to call upon them for anything, or?
Personally, no, I didn't, but I know people who did have to, and you know, for legal representation if they were under investigation, stuff like that. I know that the our local POA reps were like really passionate about it. Real good trades unionists, you know what I mean? Really sort of willing to fight governors, and not physically, but you know, willing to do battle with governors and take things higher up to like the executive. They were, in my view, they were a decent union, but I know people have different views, and I'm going to go on the record and say I didn't have to use them. I didn't have to interact with them that much. So,
but they're also a way, even though you didn't call upon them personally, that they are fighting for better officer pay. They're calling for prison officers to be armed. Example, a few years ago, I did an interview with, it used to be Mike Rolfe, who was the national chair. It's now a guy.
I know Mick Rolfe, yeah.
Yeah, do you know what? I met him in Manchester, mate. Lovely. I think he's based down your way, sort of, or just
yeah, he is,
like London. He's a nice guy. But then he balanced an argument. Now, I've done interviews with a now acting POA, Mark Fairhurst. He's a tornado. He's an NTRG. He was a gym screw at Walton or HMP Liverpool, and I'm interested to know your views on this. So I did an interview with him, and we obviously, violence within prison is an epidemic. It's a problem, and we're seeing record levels of assaults year on year, and self-harm, assaults from prisoners to prisoners, prisoners to prison officers. What annoys me personally is that it doesn't get collated prison officers to prisoners, because apparently it doesn't happen, but we know different. Some prisoners probably deserve a crack. Others, I've seen it where it's been excessive force and stuff. So what I'm saying to you is, we did an interview and he called for the tactical, I want to make that point, tactical use of Taser within prisons. I'm interested to know your thoughts and your opinions. I really am. And say what you want. I just want to know your opinion.
Okay, yeah. Just to let you know, I'm running really low on battery, so if it might die on me, but I'll try and.
No worries.
So Tasers in prison. I have been in situations where I would have loved to have been able to know that I had a taser that I could pull out, and even if you just red dot someone, they're going to comply.
Yeah.
But there's the risks. You've got a taser, someone takes it off you. They've got a taser then, haven't they? If 10 officers on a wing are all carrying taser, and you start to lose control of that wing, then you might have 10 prisoners who've got taser. So there's a flip side to everything. And I remember the same debate happened about CS spray or captor spray.
Yeah, captor,
what I always thought was a sensible middle ground was to have these things. I think I was thinking more captor, but stuff like captor or taser could be held in the orderly officer office and made available to specially trained staff. That wouldn't help you if you got caught in something spontaneous on the wing where but at the end of the day, you ain't got that now, have you? You've got your baton and your panic button. But certainly, I know that if you're going to take a couple of big lads out of a cell, you've got one option at the minute, which is to go in with shields and scrap with them. And I actually think if you could go into that, if you could pop that door open, red dot someone and they walk out with their hands up, no one gets hurt, no broken limbs, no investigations, no compo paid, no one off sick for 3 months with a broken wrist. So for that kind of thing, maybe have a taser or 5 tasers locked away in the orderly office.
Now,
and you need the governor's approval to withdraw them.
Yeah, so when I was having this radio debate, it's on my channel somewhere, and I was having this debate with Fairhurst, and he said it makes more sense now to walk into a cell, pop a cell, point a red dot on the chest. He said they'll comply, and we'll escort them to the segregation unit. My thing, I came back at him. I said, right, Mark, you yourself have acknowledged that you're not equipped to deal with mentally ill prisoners. I know that, you know that. I said, so what happens if you've got a prisoner that's he's mentally ill, and he's not in charge of his own faculties, he's not in charge of his own actions. You can then because he won't be able to comply, you'll taser him and drag him down the seg. And I said, that's, in my opinion, in that incident, if it's a mentally ill prisoner, it will be excessive, and it's like he can't comply, and it's brutalizing prisoners further. And obviously I'm for prisoners, he's for prison officers, and we had a debate and everything, and we had a nice little debate, and I was interested to know your thoughts and opinions on that. What I was going to say as well, so what injuries did you sustain while you was an officer? I'm just I
got I did my back in when I got lobbed over a landing once and landed on the netting. Some reason, I don't know why. There's never netting on the 4s, is there? It's always on the 3s. So if you get lobbed off the 4s, you've got quite a way to go. So I did my back in doing that. I've had my arm pulled out of the socket. Trying to
what pulled out? So your arm?
I'd had my arm pulled out of its socket, trying to get someone back in their cell. I'd been punched, been kicked, never been bitten, but I know a mate of mine had a big chunk of his leg taken out by a prisoner in the seg. Just normal bumps and bruises, punches, kicks, that kind of thing.
Do you think it's a matter of time before an officer is killed in the line of duty, with violence being what it is now? Obviously, it's just getting worse and worse. Yeah. Do you think eventually, God forbid as well, I want to make this point, God forbid, but do you believe an officer, it's a dangerous job, but do you think there's the real chance that in the future a prison officer will be finally murdered within prison?
Yeah, I mean, if we go back if we go back a few years, I know she wasn't a prison officer, but Lorraine Barwell was killed.
I don't know the story. Can you just explain the story? I don't actually know. God bless her, by the way. Interesting.
She was assaulted. She was doing, I think it was like Group 4 or Circa, one of the court transports. So they're not prison officers, but they are custodial staff. And she was assaulted by a prisoner and died. So it has happened. In terms of, do I think an HM prison service officer working inside a prison is going to be killed one day? Yeah, probably.
And then what I was going to say as well, my mind's just gone blank. I was trying to think of something there. If you was in charge, obviously you've moved on to pastures new and it's no longer your life, even though it's molded you into the person you are today. You've moved on. If you was in charge of the system, how would you change it? It's probably quite an open-ended question, to be honest.
First thing I'd do, there's my picture, my passing out picture behind me, by the way. Just walking up the stairs. Yeah, that's it. The first thing I'd do is I'd say that local prisons should just try and be local prisons. So for people who don't know, a local prison should just hold prisoners on remand, produce them at court, move them on when they're sentenced. I think local prisons trying to do everything and holding long-term prisoners in local prisons, it's ruined local prisons. So for me, have proper prisons where people who are serving a decent stretch are going to go, where there's loads of support, housing, advice, mental health. Really throw the money into those prisons. Local prisons produce you to court, end of, and stop trying to do everything else. Have your long-term prisons. And do you know what the biggest thing I'd do, Cody, is I would get rid of any prison sentence under 1 year long.
Amen. 1,000%. Counterproductive. No sentencing plan, no nothing. It's counterproductive. Nope. It genuinely is.
And you'll do that entire year in a local.
Yeah. What else was I going to say as well? Right. Obviously, a lot of people go into prison, not a lot of people, but LGBT in prison. I'm interested to know your thoughts on transgender prisoners within the system. I personally believe that there's got to be a way, with all the prisons that are being built, however, and we've got the growing LGBT community within prisons, that I believe that they surely got to build a prison for transgender inmates, because the abuse that they suffer within the wings, sexual abuse, comments, homophobic abuse as well. I've read countless stories about transgender prisoners in the system that, but you got like there was a woman, well, a male living as a female called Karen White, that got a gender recognition certificate, was moved to a female prison where she sexually assaulted 3 female prisoners. Yeah, so she was playing the role. She played the role just so she could abuse women whilst in prison, which is ridiculous. But I'm just interested to know your thoughts on transgender inmates, and prison's hard enough, but being a transgender inmate, I've got an issue. If you're living as a female for a certain amount of time and hormone replacement, you should be placed in a prison that you identify as, whether that's female to male or male to female transition.
Yeah, it's really tough, and not qualified to answer it in any great detail. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right that there needs to be better provision, and probably an element of like really well done risk assessment of, you know, for where you're going to locate transgender prisoners, which is right for them and right for the establishment as well. But yeah, it's a really tough one, and I honestly don't know what the right answer is, if you get the drift.
Last thing I want to speak to you about: prison officer corruption. How prevalent is it, and how do they stop it? Or you,
right,
well, I'm interested to know your opinion.
I think I used to say that like most of the stuff that was brought in to prisons was being brought in by civvies rather than officers. But then, unfortunately, one of my ex-colleagues ended up getting 10 in Belmarsh for bringing stuff in.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, a guy called Ricky. I won't name his surname.
Yeah.
But it's all out there. And that's when I thought, you know, every decent officer hates bent officers because they make the job dangerous for you. They make the job dangerous for me. They make a mockery of the job. And I was absolutely. It was him and another one, two of them, both got sent down, both got 10 years. And I was angry. I was proper angry, mate, that I'd been on a landing with this bloke. I thought he was sound. I thought he had my back. And he turned out to be like that. So, that's my other half coming in through the door.
Right. What I was going to say, because the thing is, for good officers, when contraband gets into the prison, obviously where you've got contraband, you've got debt. Where you've got debt, you've got bullying, fear, intimidation, and violence, and it undermines your job. And it actually, like you said, it makes your job. Decent officers, and there are a lot of them in the system. It puts them at risk. It really does. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, no decent officers got any time for corrupt officers. You know, that, like you said earlier, there are people, maybe they weren't right for the job, younger people who end up getting manipulated into situations. But in terms of like the guy I worked with, he was not young. He was a big lad. He could handle himself. He knew exactly what he was getting into, and he chose to get into it. So yeah.
Just push you in on another question. I know you're running low on your battery and your missus just come home. What I was going to say to you. So, did you have any notable inmates that you come across whilst you was like an officer, like high profile or like just, you know, like newsworthy sort of people? I've seen a lot of people ask prison officers this question, so I'm trying to get as much as I can out of you, advice and stories and all this stuff. So any notable inmates that you came across or that you locked up or?
Yeah, there was, but I'm going to level with you because of when you join the job, you still sign documents that you won't discuss.
Official secrets act.
Things. Yeah, exactly. So,
right.
I don't think it's right for me to start chucking names around of.
Do you know what? I respect that. So people like, again, I'm not trying to push you, but Neil Samworth, when he's writing a book and he's talking about X, Y, and Z, is he in breach of the Official Secrets Act, or is that just because he's retired now?
No, because I think with like Neil, I think he's changing the identity of people. Yeah. He's not giving their real names. And I think a lot of the situations in these books are actually like a mishmash of situations that give you the picture of what went on. So, I mean, you know, it's fun. You might write your memoirs and say that you locked up Bronson or something, which I think that's okay because he's a media figure himself. You know, he's chosen to be a media figure. But yeah, if like, so yeah, Charlie Bronson's chosen to put himself out there, hasn't he? He's written his books, he does his art and everything. So I think if I wrote a book and said I banged up Bronson at Wandsworth Seg, I don't think that's a breach of it.
No.
But I think if I were to start saying, you know, certain gangster from Brixton that I've banged up who doesn't want his name out there, and you know, I think that's probably a bit of a dodgy ground.
And the last thing, right? So I'm interested to know your opinions on the undergraduate scheme. So you for those that don't know, I believe you study for 2 years whilst getting, so it's classroom based, but you also get experience on the job. But I think it's from the age of 19 upwards, and I think it is. Don't quote me on that. I'm just interested to know your opinions on it. What, if you think it's a good thing or a bad thing, or not sure.
So yeah, you're talking about Unlock, which I think is a scheme whereby, sorry.
Well,
that's better. Yeah, Unlock's a scheme where you can join, and I think it's 2 years. They'll put you through some kind of master's degree in criminal justice whilst you, but also fast track you to like a senior position.
Yeah.
My view on that is, I'm not going to lie, it doesn't sit with me. I think you need to learn your jail craft.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got degrees. I've got multiple degrees, and I don't think it makes me any better. Would have made me any better as an officer than someone who's coming from the army, someone who's coming off the street, someone who's coming off a building site, who's actually got a few years under the belt, got people skills. It's the same in the police, accelerated promotion to ranks like inspector for people who've never actually dealt with anything challenging. So I do have a bit of a problem with it, if I'm honest. I think I'd rather that if something was kicking off on a wing in a prison that I was working at, I'd rather know that the person dealing with that, leading how it was dealt with, the response, was someone who cut their teeth on the landings, had a fair few years under the belt, fair few bend-ups, fair few roll-arounds, made friends with a fair few thousand prisoners in their time, and actually knew what to do. Because you can't learn the job from a master's degree. You just can't.
I agree. So I've been into universities, I've spoken to criminology students and things like that. Now, I said to these professors, criminologists, doctors and things like that, I said, oh, I'm just a thick, uneducated street kid. And they said, let me stop you there, Cody. They said, you put yourself down, but just say, academia looks good on paper, and you're intelligent, and you know what you're doing. But you said you've got far more life experience and more about you than people that walk around, the people that I work with, that are, what he was referring to is academia is good on paper, but that doesn't transfer to experience and life experience. No. And I think that's what you was alluding to then with what you said.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying. I mean, I think it's great to have the studies behind you in terms of, like, you know, understanding things like the Human Rights Act, Equality Act, things like that. It's never going to hurt you to have an understanding of the sociology that leads people into crime and prison. But I don't think that having that makes you suitable to be a governor within 2 years necessarily.
And when you've got a 6'4" guy and you've got your academia and you know all these things, and like you said about human rights and things that, like I said, PSOs and PSIs, you need to know these things. But when you're fronting off and you've got a 6'6", because we're evolving as people, and like I said, when you've got a lot of these kids in jail, they're doing cell workouts, they're going to the gym, they're smashing the gym, they might be working, then they're getting workers' gym. You've got some big units and stuff like that, they're buying tuna on the canteen. So prisoners are getting bigger, and we're evolving as people. The massive lumps as well that are officers. But to go into to do a degree and then fast track yourself towards senior management roles without having cut your teeth, like you said, on the landing, I just think it's a recipe for disaster, because you're academic, but you've got, how can somebody go at 19, 20-year-old, do a 2-year degree and then flying towards senior management? You've got people that have been in the job for years at ground level, working themselves up, and you've got this person that's done a degree, they come off the street. If you put the person with the degree that's done the Unlock graduate scheme with a prison officer of 2 years experience, the person with the 2 years experience I would listen to all day, because this person here has got no life experience. Yes, they're intelligent, and that's fantastic, but intelligence doesn't show you how to deal with people and pick up on talking people down. And I've got a real bad, I just feel like it looks good on paper, but I think the practicality of it, I don't think it's good at all. I can't, it doesn't sit well with me at all.
No, and like any program like that, there's going to be the odd exceptional person who does turn out to be an exceptional officer,
Yeah.
and then becomes an exceptional governor. But they would have done that anyway. They'd have been an exceptional officer whether they were on a scheme or not. But it worries me because I'm not going to lie, I've been in situations with accelerated promotion governors back in the days of APS. It used to be. It was an in-house thing. And they've made shocking decisions, and all of the boots on the ground have been going, Gov, that's mental. Gov, no, don't do that. That's a really bad move. Well, I'm doing it anyway. I'm the governor, and we've just all, sit back and watch it go wrong. And I've been in that too many times. And like you say, you see the same in the police. People coming in now at inspector rank because they've managed a branch of Costa Coffee. I don't think so. I think any service, especially a uniform or disciplined service, you need your 5-6 years on the ground before you even think about it. I think I was 7 years before I even sat my SO's exam.
You can't buy experience. It's as simple as that. The only going to get experience is not textbook, but actual. You're an academic yourself, right? And so when you're talking about degrees, obviously you've got different degrees and all that stuff, but the principle's the same. Like you said, you can't go and, like you did a music degree, and then you can't just, it's probably the wrong thing, and just get into a music studio and start doing X, Y, and Z. What I was going to say to you as well, what are your thoughts, right? And I don't mean this in a sexist way. What are your thoughts on female officers? Now, my opinion is female officers, I just want to make the point, can do the job just as good as men. 1000% they can. But what I've got an issue with is when you've got these 19, 20, 21-year-old female officers, been working in McDonald's. There's nothing wrong with working in McDonald's. Fake lips. We live in a society now where people are living this like, oh, I've got fake boobs, my lips are done, this, that, and the other. And then they're full of makeup, and they're working on landings with no life experience, highly manipulative prisoners, looking like a Barbie doll when you've got sex-starved cons. And personally, I just think it's a recipe for disaster. I think that, what are your opinions? I'm interested to know your opinions.
So I think in terms of like appearance and stuff, I think people, you can't help it if you're born attractive.
Yeah.
But you should maybe use a bit of common sense about how much makeup you have on and things like that in a prison environment, because of, like you say, the situations it can end up in. I think I'll go back to what you said. I mean, I've known female officers throughout my entire career, absolutely spot on, fantastic. And I don't think that's a problem at all. In terms of profession, I think it's a matter of professionalism, and that's where governors and senior officers maybe need to take a lead and say, just deal with that kind of thing. It's really tricky, because I believe in people's right to look and act as they want, but I don't think you can look and act as you want without any regard to the environment you're in. So I think you've got to rely on people to have a brain in their head, and if they're cut out for the job, they will have a brain in their head and they'll adapt accordingly. If you've got people who are not adapting, who are acting completely inappropriately, forming inappropriate relationships, stuff that needs to be addressed. And I don't think that's necessarily to do with whether they've got plastic lips or what have you. I think that's to do with their level of maturity. And if they're not mature enough for the job, if they can't, I might get, if you were my number one cleaner, I might get on absolutely fantastic with you. Yeah. But I'd understand that there was a line. And that line would be, I wouldn't bring stuff in for you. I wouldn't take letters out for you. And I think male or female people, if they're not able of keeping that line, then that needs to be dealt with, and maybe it's not the career for them.
Oh, have you finished? Right. So what I was going to say to you as well is, so what are your, when you was in the service, did you come, because there seems to be a spike recently of inappropriate relationships, even sexual relationships between prison officers and prisoners. Have you got any experience of that, and what are your thoughts of it in general?
Yeah, I've got, especially when I was on security, we were actively aware of, we were aware of these relationships, and eventually kind of having to bust open members of staff's lockers and finding love letters and contraband and things. So yeah, I've got first-hand experience of that happening. I think, and it happens the other side, you know, male officers, female prisoners, male officers, male prisoners, female officers, female prisoners. It's not necessarily that you're a young woman, you're going to sleep with a prisoner. I don't think that's the case. You know, I've known so many absolutely sound young female officers who would never dream of it, but it does happen. And whether that's a fault in the recruitment process or something about the job that's attracting maybe emotionally vulnerable people, who are then coming in and they're forming relationships which start out friendly, but then they're open to manipulation. It happens. I think it's always gonna happen. And I think that's where more experienced staff need to have their eyes and ears open and knock it on the head before it comes to anything. And if that means that person ends up being dismissed from the service before they go too far, then fine, that's what has to happen. And if they've gone too far, then there are consequences anyway, as you know. Yeah,
of course. And the thing is, this might sound like a silly question. Why do you think that these inappropriate relationships happen? Like, well, you just touched base with it a little bit there with the emotional sort of like side of things, and they get involved emotionally and they cross that line. But why do you think it happens? Is it manipulation? Is it because they're working alongside each other so much with officers and prisoners, and you can't help who you fall in love with or attracted to? Or is it the danger of it, or is it because they're a bad boy? Or like we've said, I remember a male officer called Paul, I can't remember his last name, Paul something, and he was working in, I think it was New Hall or Drake Hall, and he ended up having more than, he was having it with 2 female prisoners, and one got jealous and grassed it up, and it all came. Security was obviously onto it then, and then he was caught. But why do you think these relationships happen between prisoners, male or female, and then officers? Why do you think it happens? It might be a silly question.
I think you've hit it on the head in that, and this is something we've come back to several times throughout, like this interview kind of thing, was people are people, aren't they? I don't think people can help who they're attracted to and who they end up forming an emotional relationship for. I don't think people are responsible for that, and that they've got control over that. Yeah, there will be an element of manipulation. Certainly, I've seen that as well. You know, prisoners who've played on the lonely female officers who, oh, you're going home to your husband, miss. Oh no, I live on my own. And, you know, it goes from there, and it can take years. It can take absolutely years, because when I trained, they used to say, certain prisoners, they can talk the shirt off your back. It'll take them 3 years to do it, and you won't have noticed you've given it to them. And that, I think, happens, like I say. And so I don't think people can be blamed for that, but I think they can be blamed for their actions when it's happened. I think let's say you are an officer and you fall in love with a prisoner, right? The decent thing to do is to go to your #1 governor, here's my resignation. I've not gone too far with Joe Bloggs yet, but I'm compromised, and I'm emotionally attached to this person, and I'm going to resign from the service, and I'll see him on visits. I think that's the honourable thing to do. You can't punish someone for falling in love with someone, but you can punish or deal with someone's actions after they've done it.
But by being compromised and falling into that, if they don't take the route that you've just said, and they are compromised, they are open, because you know the next progression from when you're a prisoner and you've got this prison officer in your pocket, without being disrespectful, that's how I put it. It's like, then you know what's coming. Can you smuggle me this in? Can you get me this in? Can you get me that in? And the thing is, you like you said, when you was a security officer within the prison, you will have these things will have come to light, and then you've probably got the smuggling routes and things like that, because there's a trail there. But the thing is, with a lot of these prisoners, they're not actually falling in love with this officer. Some prisoners do, but a lot of them, it's just a case of prisoners are masters of manipulation. I do believe this, and they'll always seek to exploit weakness, whether that's in another prisoner, whether that's in a prison officer, whether it's in the security of the prison, or in the case of Winchester, when they was tunneling out, it's in the physical wall, the cell wall.
Yeah.
So the thing is, it's like, but the thing is, as soon as you're compromised, because you're in love and you're love struck and stuff, the prisoner can't really do anything for you because they're in prison. No. They can give you emotional support, they can text you, they can make you feel good about yourself, but it's like a one-way street where you know that the prisoner's going to be, can you bring me this, can you bring me that, and can you put money in me, can you top me canteen? And then next minute, that can then, when you start bringing things in, it undermines the security of the prison by bringing in contraband. Obviously, again, where you've got contraband, you've got debt. Where you've got debt, you've got fear, intimidation, bullying, and violence. And yeah, how many, without name dropping, how many like inappropriate relationships did you stumble upon as both an officer, security officer, and just in your time in general?
So there's obviously the ones you hear about in the papers and stuff. For me, in my time in the job, three confirmed, proven inappropriate relationships. And like you say, Cody, they all ended up going down the bringing stuff in, getting compromised, security problems. So yeah, 3 definites. 2 that we personally dealt with when I was in security, and 1 that was a member of staff on a different wing that was in love. She was in love with a prisoner. There was definitely issues there that made her vulnerable to that. And yeah, like you say, it always comes out in the wash when they get compromised and start bringing stuff in.
Without going into the security techniques that I know you can't discuss, how do these inappropriate relationships between prisoners and prison officers, how do they come to light? I mean, some people are blatant and things like that, but how do they come to light in the experiences of the 3 cases that you referenced? How did they come to light? Was it because you would have had in carnal knowledge, but I know you can't discuss the techniques that security use for obvious reasons?
Like anything, when you're working together with people for 12 hours a day, you start to spot things. People start to talk amongst their mates. Eventually 2 and 2 starts to add up to 4. 4 and 4 starts to add up to 8. So it's not like this big thunderbolt, you know, oh look, yeah, she's totally banging him. It's not like that. It builds up over time. You notice that they've unlocked that prisoner's door early, or they've come onto the wing before the other staff are on the wing. And why are they on the wands? What are they doing down there? I'm sure she's just come out of that cell. And I say just because I know people watch this kind of thing and they look for like political incorrectness. I say she's come out of that cell because I always worked in male prisons. And we're talking about female prisoner, female staff, male prisoner relation. So it just builds. You just build a picture, and enough people start to put 2 and 2 together. Then they start to talk. Then someone will have a quick word in the ear of their mate from security, and it just, you know, it snowballs like that. You might find a mobile. You might find a mobile phone on a cell spin that's got text messages on it, and you might think, hang about, I know, I recognise that number or that name in that message or whatever. It's like I say, there's never one big revelation. It's just like any kind of low-level misbehaviour. You just tend to pick up on it in the end.
Yeah, like I'm currently supporting a girl. She's spoken on the channel. She's a subscriber of mine. So she's a mother of 4 children, and she's a white girl. She likes black lads. And cut a long story short, even though she mixes with all these like different people that are in prisons and things, she's not streetwise. She's actually extremely gullible, naive, and vulnerable. She's bipolar, low confidence, and last year she got talking to a lad in High Point Prison down in Ipswich, and he worked on her, but then it was being nice. He caught her, like hooked her. She thought he was the best thing since sliced bread. You know what's coming. So then he starts harassing her, like intimidating her. She felt like because obviously correspondence through letters, he had her address. He then gets a mobile phone. He's ringing her. Listen, you bring drugs in, this, that, and the other. Now, she didn't do it for fine. She did it for. She was offered money as well, but she was also love struck. And she's up for sentencing on the 25th at Ipswich. Now, do you have any sympathy for her, the fact she was vulnerable and naive and thingy, or do you just see it as like you're stupid and you shouldn't have done it and one of them things?
Oh, it's a tough one, that, because the way it ended up, you know, is with bringing drugs in and all that kind of stuff, and obviously she's going to face the criminal law for it. So she basically found herself in a situation that spiraled beyond her ability to control it.
Yeah.
And what she should have done is go to someone and say, I'm in this. I'm up to me ankles in it right now, rather than ending up to your neck in it. Like, Governor, all right, this has happened. I need help. I know I'm fucked and I'm done in the job, and I'll never work in the prison.
Oh no, sorry, no. She wasn't an officer. I should have. It's my fault. So this, right? I should have explained. So she's not an officer. Sorry, she's not an officer. She's a single mother of four. She's a single mother of 4 children. She knows quite a few people through the prison system, and like gangbangers and things like that, like black lads that they're in prison. And she fell for this guy. Sorry, I should have explained better. And she's low self-esteem. She's a mother of 4 children. She's bipolar. This guy started with a lure of money. Then she fell for him. When you've got the blinkers on, you do things that you wouldn't ordinarily do. And then he starts harassing her. She didn't really want to do it. And he's like, look, I'll give you money. She's struggling as a single mother on benefits with 4 children. Emotionally, she's not there. She's not as streetwise as she thinks. She's quite gullible and naive. And literally, she was picked up from outside her house. The person had somebody on the out, put a parcel together, 2 ounces of cannabis, like crushed it all together, as you know, like in a little like cellophane and all that stuff tight. Had it under each boob, went to High Point. They actually knew she was coming because she wasn't good, because like the dealer didn't go on the visit. So he got someone that's probably in debt to him to go on the visit, and then security knew. So when she got to the prison, the sniffer dog indicated on her, said, have you got anything on you? She produced the 2 parcels, an ounce of each of cannabis, and she was obviously detained, and then she was arrested, and she's up for sentence on the 25th. But do you understand that, like, because she's naive and vulnerable, like, if it's a prison officer, I think it's bad enough. But this is the vulnerable girl, because prison officers, surely they receive anti-corruption training. But this woman, because she wasn't an officer. But do you have any sympathy for her case, or is it just stupid, or she's fallen into the trap, or you understand the manipulation? I understand
the manipulation. I can see how you end up there.
Yeah.
In terms of a degree of sympathy, when you're starting to get pressures put on you, and you know people know where you live, they start throwing your kids' names into things. I can see how it goes, but as it's an active case, I can't say much more.
You know what? True. So I was going to say, so with the anti-corruption training you receive, with the current state of things, for a lot of officers, they even might think of it, but then they remember. But it's happening. It seems to be happening more and more. But the thing is, there are those cases that don't hit the headlines. So if a prison governor is aware of a situation where, say, it's been confirmed, right, that it's been proven that there is a sexual relationship between an officer and a prisoner, do you believe that there's governors out there that, because they don't want the negative headlines, they'll keep it hush hush just to stop it getting out? Or is it a case of the Official Secrets Act and you don't want the bad attention? Or is it just because a lot of these stories get out through other means? But as a governor, would you keep a lid on that, or would you want it out there?
I don't know. I don't think they do keep a lid on it, because I'm seeing more and more of these things in the papers. So, you know, it's obviously coming out. I know of a particular situation. It wasn't an inappropriate relationship, but it was a financial thing.
Yeah.
And that an officer got caught bang at. They offered to make it right.
Yeah.
And everything when they were caught. And the governor said, no, you're going to court. I'm having you arrested and charged with this. So I don't think there is that, let's pretend this isn't happening. I don't think so. But that's only my experience. And like I say, I've worked in 2 prisons and under a handful of governors. There's thousands of governors and hundreds of prisons, so I couldn't say.
So when you was on the POELT training, how much time did they dedicate to anti-corruption training? Is it a drop in the ocean? Or is it quite a lot?
Yeah, quite a lot.
Yeah,
there was lots of training on that side of things, and lots of training on what we used to call back then, I don't know if they still do, conditioning. They were always talking to us about conditioning, which is what that quote I said a bit earlier about prisoner can have your shirt off your back over 3 years and you won't even know it. Yeah, there was lots of that. They covered that in a lot of depth, actually, and they did say. And on the very first day, we were all sat in the hall there, and the trainers, which were all like long in the tooth SOs, good ones, they said, right, I can't remember how many, let's say 100 of you. There's 100 of you in this hall. In the next 10 years, 30 of you will be divorced. 20 odd of you will have left the service completely. And 5 or 6 of you will be banged up yourselves. And we didn't believe it. We all laughed. We all thought it was dead funny. Yeah, right. Of course we will. Do you know what? They were spot on.
Really?
In my time in the service, I've known about 5 officers who've ended up on the other side. So their little prediction out of 100, they said 5 of you will be banged up in 10 years. They were right. So yeah, they did cover it in quite a lot of detail.
Wow, this is the thing, and it's like, even though you've had the training, but the thing is, I'm interested to know, a lot of people that are not, they're ignorant because they don't know. Law-abiding members that don't know anything about prisons, they think that prisoners are thick and stupid. Oh, well, they've got caught. Now, my attitude is, right, they might have got caught, first offense, they got caught, but for a lot of offenders, you might have got away with 50 crimes, 10, 20, 30, 50, but then you get caught for 1. So they think, well, you can't be that clever because you're thick and you got caught and you ended up in prison. But then you've worked as an officer, you've worked as a security officer within the prison. How resourceful, how people that think prisoners are thick want to see prison craft, right? You know yourself how resourceful prisoners are, smuggling routes. It's a game of cat and mouse, isn't it? Now, when you started the job, did you have a certain mindset about like thinking prison is a stereotype of prisoners, and then obviously becoming an officer, it changed your stereotype in the sense of the resourcefulness and creativity and smuggling routes and smuggling networks?
Yeah, totally. I remember I got sent on a training course. This was years ago, and it was being run by the probation service. Yeah, and they had this person in to talk to us. Wasn't a prison officer, as like say from some kind of university or something. And we ended up having a row because this person's entire outlook on prisoners was completely, to me, it was bizarre. So she said prisoners are generally in prison because they've got poor problem solving ability. And I said, I've got to stop you there. She went, what do you mean? I said, she's saying that they're not able to solve their problems in the real world, so they act out in illegal ways. And I was like, that's absolute rubbish. I said, until you've seen someone make a Phillips screwdriver to unscrew their light fittings to charge their mobile phone with nothing but a lighter and a plastic toothbrush, you're telling me that prisoners have got poor problem solving abilities? No. So yeah, you're absolutely right. People have this stereotype, and the other thing is, people think, oh, you're in prison, you've done wrong, you know, you've been caught, do your time. But actually, a lot of things that we do they're only a crime if the consequences happen, right? And I use this example to people, and I'll give this example to anyone who wants to join the service.
Yeah.
So you think this guy behind the door is bad because he did X, Y, and Z, right? And he's been caught and he's been put away for it. Have you ever driven at 70 miles an hour down a 40-mile-an-hour road? And people will go, yeah, of course I have. I go, right. So the fact is that just because a potential consequence didn't happen to you doesn't make you any difference. So you're driving at 70 down this 40-mile-an-hour road and you kill a kid. Are you going to prison? And they're like, well, yeah. I'm like, so what, apart from the end result of that action being terrible, you've still, you know, everybody is potentially like one bad decision away from prison.
1,000, but do you know what? I couldn't have put it better myself. Absolutely, it's that simple. And people, like I say, people are in. I think people are in the mindset that they'll never end up in prison. But how can you can never say that. You might be law-abiding person in the world, but you cannot definitively say that. Like you said, if you're going 5 miles over the speed limit, 10-minute mark, and there's a young girl recently around here, just ran across the road, hit by a car. And it's just as simple as that. It can happen. And then you look at, if you're over the speed limit, they'll do you for death by dangerous driving, and you're going to end up in prison. And this is the thing. So it's that simple. When it comes to prison, do you believe that there should be a minimum age requirement for people joining the prison service? And what age would that be? And what age would that be, in your opinion?
25.
I 1,000% agree. Why do you think they should be? Why do you think that at 18, 19, 20, 21, they shouldn't be able to join the service, in your experiences?
I think because at that age, you've potentially, not always, some people have had a life by that age, but they're in the minority, aren't they? You know, I think you grow up. Let's take your average person who has your average life, lives in a 3-bedroom semi with their mum and dad, goes to school, goes on to university. How are they going to relate to drug dealers from Brixton and, you know, enforcers from Salford? And I think until you know who you are, I don't think you can deal properly with people from all over society. You know, you're not born with it. It doesn't come overnight. I think to jump in at 19, 20, 21, it's too young. And you're too impressionable at that age. You'll either have an impression made on you by the wrong kind of officers and you'll end up going down the dickhead route potentially, or the prisoners will get under your skin somehow. So yeah, 25, you've had a few jobs. Even if you've gone to university, you'd have had a few jobs and stuff afterwards by the time you're 25. Or you'll have been on the dole or something else that's giving you some experience of life.
I agree with you. I actually say myself, 25 should be the minimum, because it's still, like you said, it's still a career and everything like that. But the thing is, the way the service is now, from the other side of the door, is that obviously the cuts have been decimated, and it's decimated the prison service and the cuts, and it's like shit rolls downhill, and prison officers are only a step above the prisoners, really, in that regard. What I was going to say to you, well, I don't know, you've probably seen them because I kept retweeting them. I was obsessed with them. What are your thoughts on this TikTok craze amongst prison officers? Some of them are private prisons, which I've got my own opinions on, but prison officers doing this TikTok thing, I'm just interested to know your opinion, because the prison service for me, I still think it is. It's regimented, and I'd rather be, a lot of prisoners that watch this channel would rather be in a HMP than a private prison because of the structure, of the structure of the regime. But when it comes to these TikTok videos, these silly bloody TikTok videos, have you got a thought or opinion on it? Would you ever find yourself doing one of these TikTok videos?
No. I'm completely on your page, and I know the exact video you're talking about. It's just
There's
don't,
loads of
just
them.
don't do it.
There's loads. You know what? There's
Was it?
absolutely.
I think there was one that went round.
Yeah. The thing is, it's like it's during this coronavirus thing, and like I said, I'm not against prison officers having a laugh and having banter and everything like that. Of course.
Yeah.
But the thing is, the prisoners are locked up, and the thing is, it's like they're doing like dance routine. They must be taking the time to like practice, pick a song, practice, and then they're standing outside the front of prisons, right? And they're doing all these silly TikTok videos, and I just think it's unprofessional. I just find it I find it unprofessional. That's the biggest thing I have to say, really.
Yeah, I agree. I completely agree. And as you know, I now work in a different public service, and TikTok, a bit of a TikTok craze swept through that service.
I've seen it. I've seen it.
And I think it's dreadful, to be honest with you. It looks ridiculous. It undermines the status of the service, the seriousness of the job. Like you say, it's a semi-regimented service. It should have minimum standards of discipline and behaviour, and be viewed in a certain way by the public and prisoners' families as well. And I know that the National Health Service was criticised for doing these TikToks on empty wards and stuff, and people were quite rightly saying, we're being told we can't visit our relatives in hospital because of this virus, and you're all dancing around. I just think whatever service you're in, police dancing on TikToks, no. So like I say, just
another thing that was frustrating me is he was all talking about social distancing and stuff, and these people outside the prison, and it's like, because all these officers, some of them, there was quite a big groups, and there's no way that they was all working, because apparently you walk in, you're supposed to social distance, don't shake hands, and then they're not social distancing on a lot of these videos, and they do it, and I look at it, and this used to be like it's a professional thing. You're locking up prisoners, and like I said, I'm not against anybody having a laugh, having a joke in the canteen on your dinner as an officer, finishing work and going for a pint and laughing and drinking yourself under the table. Knock yourself out, but don't stand outside a prison. A lot of these prison videos with these TikTok things, you've got prison governors taking part and stuff. You've got HR, you've got your gym orderlies, and they're all there. And I just look and I'm thinking, all right, like you alluded to with the NHS side of things, you've got people dying from this highly contagious, deadly disease, and you've got people like and doing all these, and they've got, it's not just a spare of the moment where they're all doing different things. The synchronizing the dance routines.
Yeah.
I'm looking, I'm thinking, there's prisoners that are locked up, right? Yeah, we've done wrong. And let them out, go and let them get a shower or something, get on the phone or something. Don't be standing outside doing all this one hand. And I literally I downloaded them all. I put them all in a little compilation and I put them on the channel. Well, I'm interested to know your thoughts on drugs within prison and spice. I think when did you leave? 2014, 2013.
Spice was around, yeah.
So what are your thoughts on drugs in prison as a whole, and obviously the damage they cause officer-wise, and just life on the wing with when you've got this tense atmosphere on the wing, you've got mental health, you've got prisoners some with mild, some with significant mental health issues, and then you've got hooch, home-brewed prison alcohol, fermented fruit, and then you add drugs into the mix, and then particularly spice. It must have caused havoc for you on the job and in the time you was in the service.
Spice did, yeah. So rights and wrongs of drugs are illegal, and they're illegal in prison, definitely. So, the rights and wrongs of that are a different debate entirely, I think, where, I think any officer who's spent any time around prisons can completely understand why someone might want to sit in their cell and skin up a joint at the end of the day. Spice was crazy stuff, though. When that came in, we were getting 6 or 7 ambulances out a day because of it. It was knocking officers sick as they're having to go into cells. Dangerous. My view was, take you something like cannabis, hash, whatever. At the end of the day, it's not dangerous. Might be illegal, you know, that's a different story, debate entirely, but it's not dangerous. The other flip side of it is like the trade and everything of it in the prisons is dangerous and it causes its own problems. But I'm talking about the chemical. The chemical itself isn't that dangerous. The smoking that you've got to do with it's the biggest risk, to be fair. But spice is just melts your brain. Obviously, that's not medical terminology, but yeah.
What sort of things did you see with the drugs and stuff like that? With the obviously, again, going back to the old thing, where you've got contraband, you've got debt, fear, intimidation, bullying, and violence. People keeling over on it, people smoking it openly on the wing. Prison officers inhaling this as well. So, what were your experiences like with people falling into the catatonic states and using it as a coping mechanism, or spiked, or bullied into it, or just taking it off their own back?
Yeah, with spice, most of the things I found was people having seizures. We had one spice got onto the wing with, like I say, anything between 3 and 6 ambulances a day for people having seizures, which is not great for them because, you know, there's no antidote to spice. It's just got to run its course. Once you've taken it, it's got to run its course. It can kill you. These seizures can kill you if you can't be brought. What you can do is bring someone out of a seizure medically, but if sometimes you can't do that, so that's dangerous. But if you think about it as well in terms of running a jail, every prisoner that has to go out in an ambulance is taking I've worked in Cat Bs and Cat A, so that's every prisoner who goes out has got 2 officers with them. So you've got 3 ambulances out, that's 6 of your officers gone. That's a lot of prisoners who aren't going to get to phone their missus that night because their wing's going to be banged up.
Yeah, and it's like, obviously it causes havoc within the wing, and like you said, when you've got violent people in a violent atmosphere, and then you add in like the debt side of things as well, you've got your hierarchy, you've got your prisoners sitting pretty at the top. But do you know what always, like, I'm not against people, like, I know it's illegal drugs in prison, of course, and I'm anti-drugs completely. And when you're seeing, but when it comes to the I call them victims, I mean it in the nicest possible way. Like when it's the people at the bottom, it's people with the mental health issues, it's people with the addictions. And the amount of times when I've been stood on the twos and like I've seen people spikes and stuff like drop, like obviously tobacco's now banned in prison, and it's like they'll pick, someone's dropped a rollie on the floor or a spliff, and someone's thinking like someone that's addicted to spice or an addict, and they pick it up and they start to light it, and the next minute they're like fall into them catatonic states. It's the people at the bottom, and that's somebody's son, it's somebody's brother, and then they're filmed, and then they're posted on social media sites and things like that.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on mobile phones within prisons?
I think if they could be given, you've got 2 options: either a really good in-cell telephone system, which is, you know, where your numbers are cleared by security. That's the ideal solution, I think. Or I don't know how feasible it would be to give a prisoner on reception a locked Nokia 5510 or something that's got 10 numbers that they're allowed to dial. I don't know how feasible it'd be. I mean, it's like you've got public protection issues, obviously, but if the numbers are vetted, just like you vet someone's PIN phone number, what's the difference? I don't see the difference. You know, we all know that with the PIN phone, people get around security vetting by getting their mates to, let's say they've got a restraining order or something, they'll get their mate to put the person on their PIN phone. It's, you know, there's so many flaws in the system to start with. There's no point worrying about how if you bring in a new thing.
Have you ever come across this, Joe? So when I was in Forest Bank, right? So I was in Forest Bank, and I threatened my sister's ex-boyfriend, right? So I threatened him and I threatened his missus, right? And so I fell under the public protection unit. I've been sentenced. I was in prison. I fell under the public protection unit. Now, whilst I was under the public protection unit, I put numbers in, and cut a long story short, I rang my mum and it rang. So I rang. I said, "Oh, the prison rang you." She went, "To clear the number." She went, "No." So what I worked out is the prison, because this Sodexo prison, Forest Bank, is a private prison.
Yeah.
The first name and the last name of a private prison is financial gain, and that comes at the behest of a lot of things. Now, to save money on clearing numbers, even with myself on the public protection unit, they just clear the number without checking to save money. Does that shock you in any capacity?
It doesn't. I can tell you that back in the day when I was in the job, that's not what was done. But it doesn't shock me if that's happened at all. So they've probably made in these establishments. I'm not going to name a particular one and end up getting sued by them. But in certain establishments, they might think, well, actually, we don't need to. We won't bother with the employing people to clear these numbers and yada yada. We'll just wait until we get a complaint and then we'll deal with it. I don't know, but yeah, does it surprise me? No, it doesn't. Not at all.
The thing is, so when I went to Strangeways is HMP. My mum was kicking herself and she was snapping. My mum's she's got a cochlear implant, and with this cochlear implant, if she's got it off, she can't hear. Even when she's got it on, it's like if her phone's in a bag, she might not hear it. So she missed 2 calls, and then she missed a 3rd call. So Strangeways, I had to put another app in to get the number back on. She finally got hold of it, and Strangeways HMP did it by the book. I was under the public protection unit there as well because I was in on a witness intimidation, and they did it by the book. But Forest Bank are and still are. Well, put it like this. So I live on my own. And when I was padded up with a lifer, killed his dad. This guy was called, I won't say his name, but he's in prison. He killed his dad with a hammer. His dad had nonced his sister, and he was high on cocaine. Went into a block of flats near Salford, near the precinct. Took a hammer to him, killed him. Ends up in prison. Got a minimum tariff of 22 years. I'm in prison with him. We're mates. This guy was the best thing since sliced bread. Put my number in on an app. No one's at my gaff to clear that number, and my number. He's ringing me, sat next to me, ringing me, and I know that no one's cleared that phone call. So that's when I knew that the public protection unit at Forest Bank isn't protecting anybody. If you're in for domestic abuse, you get these domestic abuse situations where you've had a row. She puts a complaint in, she puts a statement into the police. You find yourself in prison. But then she's coming up on visits, and it happened with visits. It's happening with phone calls, and the thing is that could be creating further victims, because if you've got someone in prison you're in prison on a witness intimidation, you can ring the victim in your case from a prison phone which is recorded. It's unbelievable. What else was I going to ask you? I'm trying to get as much in as I can, and I've settled in now. At the start, my anxiety levels were up here, and I was like, that's why I couldn't get my word in out. I feel calm now and relaxed. But what I was going to say to you, what is right? If a prison officer is watching, a potential prison officer, is watching this, and the job's been sold to them, they've seen an advertisement, you're going to change the lives of offenders for years to come, and all these things. Is that the case, or are they being missold the job?
That goes right back to the beginning. I don't think they're being missold a job. No. I think if they make that difference to 10 people over a 20-year career, but that's still 10 people in it.
Do you know what? I never looked at it like that, but you've just corrected me. Yeah, that's 100% correct.
So yeah, I don't think they're being sold a lie in that respect. I know that I've done things with lads inside that's made a difference. It's been a tiny amount, but it has. So have I made a difference in that job? Then, well, yeah, definitely. You might not be. You might.
Go on. Sorry.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, what you were going to say.
If you can change one person's life, it's like this channel, for example. And do you know what? I'm annoyed at myself there. I'm proper narrow-minded there, because I was like, "Oh, you've been missold the job" and stuff like that. And but then I just look at my own channel. So the aim of this channel is, it never had a name to start off with, but when I always try to act as a deterrent. And if that stops one person thinking, you know what, I don't want to go to. I've heard all these horror stories I don't want to go to prison. And if they desist and continue with a law-abiding life and pick another choice, then if one person's seen that, then that's a good thing as well. So you have made a change, albeit a small one. The fact is, it brings about change. Joe, in your opinion, prison is sold as rehabilitation. Now, in my experiences, like I said, you might have different ones and you might be able to open my eyes again. Does rehabilitation take place in prison? Is prison about rehabilitation?
Not really when I was there. Like I say, I think a lot of that problem is that even a place like Wandsworth is still a local. It's still a Cat B local. And the same for a place like Lewis, is that it's trying to do too many things. So going back earlier to what I said, I think the solution is to have no sentences under a year.
Yeah.
Anyone who's getting a sentence of a year or above, once their court case is done, they shouldn't go back to that local, apart from obviously to collect their bits and bobs, and then they should go to a prison that's a rehabilitation focused prison. So you've got these prisons in my head, right? You should have these prisons that have got complete focus on rehabilitation, education, not sticking teapacks together all day in a workshop, not doing all that rubbish, but proper education, OU degrees, workshops that teach trades, plastering, mechanics, the lot, whatever, benefits advisors, drugs and alcohol advisors, everything. Throw everything into these prisons and see what comes out the other end. But that's too expensive for the government. But
yet reoffending as of last year reoffending is estimated last year to cost between 13.5 billion and 15 billion pounds a year annually.
Yep. But that's because the government won't take a long-term view. They never look beyond the end of the next election or the end of the financial year. So they think, right, I could build this super prison that Joe keeps banging on about. It'll cost 30 billion pounds. Well, we can't do that then, can we? Yeah, but hang about, Boris, how much is reoffending going to cost in the next 5 years? Oh, about 100 billion. But they won't do it because they might not be in power in 5 years and they don't care.
And the thing is, it really, like with the politics, I don't know if you've got a different view to myself. So when it comes to the government and the MOJ, right, it's like I get quite wound up because these people have done political degrees, and these people, they've been, not all of them, because a lot of it, but these MPs for the most part are born into privileged middle class families. Not all of them, but then what annoys me is how they just pass the crown of, right, so Justice Secretary, Chief Executive of Her Majesty's Prison Probation Service, and they pass it round like it's just going, like it's like a glass. Oh, try this. And the thing is, the people that are in power of the criminal justice system, and I mean this for prison officers, probation staff, prisoners, you've got people for the most part that are the politicians that are residing over people that they can't relate to in any which way, and that's part of the problem for me. Because how can you, if you've been raised in a middle class family and stuff, and you've never suffered impoverished things, or you've never been sexually abused or physically abused, or been raised in a violent home with domestic violence, how can you relate to us? How can you relate to the people you're residing over to? Because you won't have any sympathy or empathy, or not even empathy or sympathy, understanding of those people, but yet you're residing over their lives.
Yeah,
it annoys me.
It annoys. That's always annoyed me as well. In that, in theory, take something like, I think NOMS isn't a thing anymore, is it? National Offender Management's gone back to being HM Prison and Probation Service, or
national, because I think it was national. It was. I think it's going back to being nationalised, isn't it? They're taking it out of the private hands, but
So, not so much the government. I'm not going to talk about government ministers here. That's a different kettle of fish entirely. But in theory, right, anyone who joins the prison service at the ground floor, in theory, could become the head of the prison service.
Yeah.
In reality, we know that's not the case. there are other factors at play, like you say, the little chalice that gets passed around, the select people, and they're often the least suited people for the job. So yeah, in theory, anyone starting day one of POELT now could become the chief exec of the criminal justice system, but it's not going to happen. And you're right, this little chalice gets passed around. Certain organisations have a shadowy hand in selecting people for these top jobs. So yeah, that side of it is corrupt, in my opinion.
What are your views? And like I said, I don't know if you can answer this or you're willing to answer this. What are your views on sex offenders? Can you rehabilitate a sex offender? Namely, I know we know about rapists, but paedophiles. In your, if you can't answer this, I get it. But in general terms, do you believe that you can rehabilitate a sex offender?
That's a really tricky one, and I'm not qualified to give a definitive answer on that. I think if something's a person's sexual orientation, then I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a mental health professional, so I'm well out of my depth here. I don't know if that can be changed, as in, if you have a brain that finds that attractive, I don't know if that brain can ever be deprogrammed. I think you can probably program that person to not offend, and potentially assess them as safe for release. I always think I am, as a heterosexual, if being attracted to women became illegal tomorrow and you locked me up for 20 years, I'd still be attracted to women in 20 years' time.
That's a very good way to put it.
Because that's the way my brain's wired. But like I say, in terms of, are there programs out there that can help people not act on their desires if they're, for example, paedophiles? I don't know. I know that SOTP has been pretty much discredited. That's been
So I posted about a week ago, 2 weeks ago. So there was a BBC File on 4, BBC Radio 4 did this thing, and what they did, they looked in depth at sex offender, the SOTPs, the sex offender treatment programs, and so they interviewed, right? They used voice actors, but they somehow interviewed 2 sex offenders that were in prison at the time. Now, they were talking about this sex offender treatment program, which has now been discredited. It's been replaced by, I think, Kaiser and this one called Horizon. And they said that whilst on the sex offenders wing, well, not just sex offenders, but the VP wing, they was in a classroom, and they gather up the sex offenders within the wing. They put them in a classroom, and they'd have this hot chair. In my opinion, it should be the electric chair. But what they do, so you take time in this hot seat where other sex offenders ask you about your offending, whether it be downloading child abuse images or whether it be actively sexually abusing children. And these 2 sex offenders said on this program, on this radio thing, that whilst in prison and whilst being in this classroom, by listening to paedophiles and rapists talking about what they used to do to people, it actually turned them on. They was getting aroused in a classroom listening to other sex offenders, and then it'd be their turn, then it'd be their turn. So you might be listening to over a course of a few weeks, hours of a sex offender talking about how they abuse people and how it made them feel and the sexual sort of thing. So when you're in prison and the sex deprived, and rightfully so, and the listeners, they're getting aroused, and I don't know how they gain this, but the statistics said that this course could or did potentially was going to create more victims down the line. And that then was discredited, that sex offender treatment program. But the thing is, with these government courses, with these courses that they put into prison, I know this is going to sound crazy, but it's like a drug. It's never been tested. They put it together, all these intelligent people and everything, and it looks good on paper. But the first time it gets a run out, you only know it's not working once you put it into a prison. So you're doing a course which is not being tried and tested. I listened to this program, and I don't normally listen to radio pieces, but I was fascinated. And I've got my own views. Like I said, this is how I put it. You said if it became illegal to go to be with women tomorrow, you go to prison and you'd still fancy women. So what I say is, I know it's more thingy than this, more complicated this, but I say, if you go to prison sexually attracted to women, you'll leave sexually attracted to women. If you go to prison sexually attracted to men, you will leave sexually attracted to men. If you go to prison with a sexual interest in children, right, you will leave with a sexual interest in children. And I said, with these sex offenders, if the longer they're in the system, just like it is, well, no, with sex offenders, the longer they're in the system, if they can't access a mobile phone, they can't view these images to get themselves off, right? So rats masturbate, whatever. So they can't get themselves off. So whilst they're in prison, these sexual urges build and build and build and build, and then they're released. And the amount of people that I've done paedophile hunting, Joe, as well. The reason that I got involved with this, with the paedophile hunting world and things, was because I was sexually abused by someone that lived local to my mum and my stepdad. So that's sort of why I did it, and it caused me lifelong problems. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that my criminality is because I was sexually abused and had an abusive childhood. I'm responsible for my own actions, but were they contributing things in some factor to the fact that I was violent and aggressive? I was victim. I had a very violent and abusive upbringing, so I became violent and abusive. Right, I'm ashamed to say that, and it did. And yeah, it's just one of these things. But I wanted. So when you was working within the prison, obviously you would have worked with sex offenders in.
Sorry, one sec.
So I don't just. Well, I feel like you're jiggling around the house and stuff.
I know, I'll keep moving around. I did very briefly work on the vulnerable prisoner wing. Yeah. Wasn't my cup of tea, if I'm honest with you. If that makes any sense, I don't think it'd be anyone's particular cup of tea. You're right. I did find that there was a lot of manipulation on that wing. Because of the social background that a lot of these offenders were from, which was more sort of the middle class, the professional classes. So, yeah, it was a rough wing to work on in that respect, in that you've got people who've done these horrific things, but because they were a barrister or a teacher or police inspector in life, felt that they were somehow better than you as an officer and better than the other prisoners. And so yeah, I mean, I'm limited in what I can say about my views to a degree because of that was difficult. I didn't find they were able to manipulate me, but they certainly tried. And they tried it with all the staff. I can give several examples.
Hypothetically speaking.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I don't want you. Yeah, go on. Go on. I'm interested to know your view.
Things on that unit, for example, they went through a phase of referring to each other as Mr. Which is totally different to a normal wing where, I might say to you, oh, Cody, have you seen Jonesy anywhere? They were coming up to officers, and because of their sort of professional backgrounds, and like saying to officer, have you seen Mr. Smith? Be like, who's Mr. Smith? Is that a governor? Is that another officer? No, Mr. Smith, cell 323. Have you seen him? And I found that side of it really hard to deal with.
Bizarre, weird.
Yeah, I did struggle with that side of it. In terms of the programs as well, like as you said, I had a lot of reservations about the programs, reservations that since I've left the job have come out in the wash and seem to have been correct, you know. I've heard stories like what you said about these round robins of discussing their offending and stuff, and whether or not that has some kind of academic framework to it that they're using to justify this creation of this program or not. I feel that that side of it is dangerous, in that you, as you said, you're running an untested program, but because somebody's completed this program and they've got this certificate, they're going to show that as an evidence of reduction in risk. How are you evidencing this reduction in risk? I've got this certificate from this course. Do we know this course reduces risk? Well, no, we don't, because it's never been tried before. But you're going to let somebody out on the back of that. So, yeah, it's really dodgy.
You imagine that if they had to go before the pro board, right, and you've done your courses and stuff like that, albeit on a course that's not actually tried and tested, and there's no statistics. There was no statistics saying, right, well, this and reoffending was this, and this percent didn't reoffend and this one did, and these were recalled or whatever, or reoffended, right? But because you've ticked that box and you've actively worked with the offender management unit, and it's apparently the aim of this course is to show that you are a reduced risk on, albeit a course that's not, there's no statistics for, it's government approved, but what does that actually mean? And I've always, because I was abused, I've going to have I think everyone's got a view of it, and it's not, I don't think anyone looks at paedophilia in a positive way. But because of the damage it did to me, I just despise them. And I know they're despised in prison and everything. But yeah, the courses are discredited. But because they've done that, because they've, well, I've done the course. Well, you've done the course, and the government have passed it. So yeah, there you go. It's a scary, scary, scary thing. But the thing is, like, so when you was working on this wing, you know why these people are in prison. Not the one thing, and I'll ask you the question. Obviously, I know it. On the vulnerable prisoners unit, vulnerable prisoners wing, it doesn't just house sex offenders. What other prisoners do you find on the vulnerable prisoners wing, VP? What other prisoners?
That's a really good question, actually, because, like you say, not everyone's on there because of sexual offences or anything like that. People who've got themselves into too much debt on the main can end up moved to the vulnerable prisoner unit. People who are just not coping on the main prison will end up on there. Generally speaking, the vulnerable prisoner units, they are less violent because of the nature of the offending that the majority of the inmates are in for. You know, they're not people who've going to break your legs because you didn't pay for the heroin you bought. You know, that's not why they're in. So the level of violence and stuff is lower on the VP. So yeah, people who are just really not coping, or people who are absolutely getting ripped on and destroyed, you know, completely like predated by the bad guys on the wings in the main, get moved onto the vulnerable prisoner unit. Mainly debts and people who aren't coping.
Yeah, and the thing is as well, it's obviously you say you had a really high profile sex offender, you know that he's landed in the prison, Chinese whispers, some officers openly talk about other inmates and who's in and stuff like that. They shouldn't do, but it happens, people chit chat. You could yourself, as a general population prisoner, put yourself on VP to try and take out or kill that actual sex offender.
Yeah.
Or you could even be paid. If you could even be paid to put yourself on VP to carry out an attack.
Yeah, I'm sure that happens. In fact, didn't that happen to Ian Huntley?
I've read the story. I didn't know that was the case, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was a general pop that did it.
I think it was.
Yeah, what I was going to say. So the thing is with society, people that don't know anything about prison, the amount of times where, like, we've done a paedophile sting and people in the comment section, well, wait till he gets into prison, he'll get dealt with. These people obviously don't know about protective wings within prison, the vulnerable prisoners wing and things like that. If they had away with vulnerable VP wings tomorrow, how it'd be a free for all. There'd be murders every week, every day. I believe they genuinely would.
Yeah, yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And like you say, I think most people don't realise just how protected that population is within the prison. There are some staff who absolutely love working on that population, possibly because the violence and the argy-bargy is lower, and you know, you're less likely to be rolling around the floor with someone and on the VP wing. But yeah, people outside don't realise that these VP wings exist and just how protected they are. Like I said to you earlier, you know, even to the extent that you're in radio contact to make sure you don't move VPs through a yard of general prisoners and stuff. Yeah, if they did away with VP units, yeah, it'd be carnage. You're absolutely right. That's the moral code that exists within prisons, and for whether that's right or wrong, whether someone who's murdered someone is better than someone who's done something else, that's a different story entirely. But you know, the fact is there is this moral hierarchy in prisons, whether it's correct, whether it's based on fallacy or not. You know, I murdered 3 people. He abused a child. I'm better than him. That's not a debate I'm going to go into. But you know, I'm well aware that hierarchy exists, and general population prisoners do view VPs as the lowest of the low. Yeah. So, God, if you did away with VP wings, yeah.
But the thing is, if they had away, I know you can't, but if they had away with the vulnerable prisoners units, well, I don't think I was just about to say something. I was going to say it might, as because paedophiles would be openly murdered within prison and rapists would. Like I said, it might act as a deterrent to paedophiles on the out, but I don't think it would. I was just about to say, it might act as a deterrent, but like you said, like you alluded to, it's a sexual orientation. They are dialed in. A woman, the most beautiful woman in the world, could be lay there naked on a bed, and it's not going to do anything for a paedophile. And and it could act as a deterrent, but it probably wouldn't, because these people, they don't think logically, and they don't think it. It's like we've caught paedophiles. My first ever paedophile sting, this guy, he'd been caught twice, once by our team, once by another team. He was under investigation from the police, South Yorkshire Police. We caught him again. So he must have looked thinking, right, I'm talking to a child, like it was our decoy, but he's thinking, oh, well, yeah, but so he must have looked, you've been caught twice before. So your brain, anyone else would think, well, that radiator, I've touched it twice, it's hot. So he must have thought, well, twice I've done it, twice I've been caught. So, but the sexual urges overtakes the rational thinking. And that's why these paedophiles turn up, and that's why we're able to snare them. There was a guy that a team caught recently, and this guy had been a detention officer, former ex-soldier, served tours of Northern Ireland. He'd been a detention officer, police detention officer, like not police officer, you know what?
Yeah. Know what you mean.
17 years, 64 years old. And he got 3 years, 6 months. His marriage fell apart. His sons washed their hands of him. One of his sons had a granddaughter. There are repercussions for these people, but when they go to prison, I think people think it's like they're thrown into, right, yeah, put nonce on his top, throw him into general pop, and he gets dealt with. Like we've said, even in the prison, Forest Bank, I'm coming back from, we got held in reception because paedophiles were coming back from some of VPs were coming back from a workshop, so they put the freeze on, as you know. Orange lights are flashing all over the prison, bam, 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 so they can get back to their wing safely. So the only time we really saw them was when we went, if we was on the yard, or we was in the cells, because they was actually housed on the wing adjacent to ours on the 2s, and they'd be on the yard, and the usual shouts coming out the windows. And then if you go on a visit, they're held in a separate holding room. But when we go into the visit, in strange ways, all the visiting chairs and tables are on the right, but you had this about 12, 16 tables on the left, and the rather than the paedophile, I keep saying VP sitting there, facing outwards. They just face like they're like the wall there and the chairs in front of them. But the thing is, it's like, so when you was working on this wing, it made you feel uneasy, or you just didn't like working with them because of the way that because you knew what they was in for, and you just didn't like working with them because of their attitude, or just the way that it was a bit, you would have had your own opinion.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, 9 times out of 10, when you're dealing with someone, what they're in for isn't actually going round your brain. You're just dealing with whatever's in front of you, whether they're asking you for a bog roll or submitting a gym application. You know, even on the VP wing, you don't 90% of your day is spent. You're not thinking, this is Jim. He's the one who did that. You know it, but it's not there at the front of your mind. You're just dealing with what you've got to deal with. Well, I guess I didn't enjoy it because, as I said, I didn't like the levels of manipulation that went on there. I didn't like the attempts to control officers that, like I say, with the whole like the Mr. saga that went on for a few weeks, and I just didn't. Yeah, it's just not my thing. I'd rather be on the floors or down on the ones with the cleaners.
Yeah. What I was going to say as well, every time I do interviews, radio, whatever, they always say like, Cody, like, because I think that the people that don't know, that are ignorant about prisons because they don't know, because they haven't got a clue, right? I always get asked this question, and I'm interested to know your opinion. The question that I'm asked, and I'm asking you, is, are we too soft on prisoners, do you think?
Are you going down the whole like being allowed a PlayStation in your cell type thing?
Yeah, probably, down that route.
Yeah. Do you know what? I'm going to sound like a real soft ass here, but no, I don't think that's taking everything away and here's your desk and your writing pad and your one bowl of soup a day. I don't think that's the way to go, because I think, as we said like a while back, these are people who are going to come out and live amongst everyone else. So too soft. What does too soft mean? One thing that I remember from long ago, and it's a key point of English law, and it is actually a key point. They try and sort of stress this point at officer training, is that the punishment is not what is done to you inside a prison. The punishment is a loss of liberty. That's the punishment. So to start inflicting your own punishments outside of the lawful ones, you know, like the adjudication and nickings, if you go into work, you think, I'm going to make prison really shit for Cody on the ones today. I'm going to make it really shit. Why are you doing that? That's not your job. Their punishment has been given by the court, which is to lose their liberty. They've lost the liberty. You coming in and being an arsehole and ripping everything out of the cell and leaving them with nothing and banging the door and making them miss their gym. What's that going to achieve? It's probably going to get you weighed in the next time his door's open. And it's not going to release a well-balanced person into the community at the end of it.
This is the thing. So if they took TVs away tomorrow, the thing is as well, what I always set people up with is televisions, right? Obviously under IEP, incentives and privileges, right? Yeah. You've got to be behaved. You're paying for your television, right? Your PlayStation, you've got to earn the right to be able to buy a PlayStation. And this is the thing. So people are like, it's like, if you're on basic, unless you bought a bloody TV off people, and it's happened. I've seen kids robbing TVs on social and the usual stuff. But the thing is, it's like, if you took TVs, PlayStations, and everything away from prisoners tomorrow, I believe we'd see more violence further. I genuinely do.
Yeah, big time. Absolutely.
I call televisions in prison, I call them distraction devices.
And why shouldn't you have one? It's not your job isn't to go into prison and sit on your hands and knees and think about what you've done. You're there to lose your liberty, which is what you've done. That's your punishment. I'd rather deal with a wing of people who've got PlayStations and tellies, who I know that I can open the door and they're not going to come flying out wanting to tear me to pieces. Yeah, and that doesn't mean was some kind of carsy or soft ass or anything. It's just the way to, just the way to be. Why would I want to make someone angry?
And the thing is, if you took away TVs and PlayStations tomorrow, prisoners, really, what have you got to lose? Because it's like you're on basic anyway. Well, apart from you'll still get your social, it's like being on basic. If you've got nothing to lose, you don't care, do you?
No.
The one thing I'm interested in, go on, sorry, go on.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, if let's say you're already a lifer.
Yeah.
If you're a lifer who's got a PlayStation, a telly, gets out to the gym, you can still lose them things. If you were a lifer and you were in a cell with a cardboard table and a chair, why would you not weigh in the first officer that opens your door every morning?
100%. What I was going to say to you as well, right? I'm interested, right? I'm interested to know your opinions on this, because I conjugal visits, right? What I mean, right? I'm straight away. You're probably thinking, right? But what I'm going down the route of with conjugal visits, right? Say every prison had an airport-style scanner that you'd have to go through.
Yeah.
Things like that, right? You're in enhanced carrot and stick approach. So enhanced prisoners only, might be once a month. The visitor would have to go through an airport style scanner. Obviously, women have got more orifices than men, shall we say. With the carrot and stick thing, I think in some part, not fully, but in some part, it would reduce, just only in smidge, might reduce potentially violence and things like that. I'm interested to know, would you give it, and can you see arguments for and against?
I can see arguments for, which is exactly what you said. If you go as far back not as far back, but if you look at the European Convention of Human Rights, the right to family life, which is a qualified right, which means it's not absolute, so it can be taken away, for example, by imprisonment. But it's still a fundamental human right, and depriving people of basic human needs is not necessarily going to be the best thing to do. So would if I was in charge of a prison, if they gave me a prison and said, you can run it as you see fit, do what you want, would I allow or have facility for that kind of visit? Yeah, I would. With your aircraft scanners, you'd have to make sure the people who were coming in, they weren't under coercion. There was nothing like that. This is someone you'd lived with. It was your wife, your husband, whatever. All the checks and balances that would have to be in place because of the massive consequences if you got it wrong. But if you can do that, I don't see why not. I imagine some countries probably do.
Holland. I was locked up with a kid that was in an importation conspiracy, Class A, from London area, been in prison all over the world, this kid, unfortunately. Well, read what he sold. And whilst in Holland, I can't remember, I think he said once a month. The thing is, like I said, so because I'm not stupid when I say, I don't just go, give them to prisoners willy-nilly. Like I said, you've got to look, you'd have to do it. And the reason that I say carrot and stick is because it's got to reflect, there's got to be statistical decent thing that if you're going to get reducing violence within the prison, potentially, if you're all prisoners bouncing around the wing producing testosterone, right? And then that macho like sort of mentality, if you fail a drugs test, you could lose it. If you get busted down to you basic, and then you've got to work you back up to your standard, and so on and so forth. If carrot and stick approach, airport style scanners, if you refuse to go through it, simple, you're not coming into the jail, right? And then I think it would, because you're going to have that relief, and you're going to have something to look forward to. Because when you're enhanced at the minute, really, apart from you can buy a guitar and your PlayStation and your extra visit a month and things like that, and you can spend more on the canteen, which is ultimately making the prison more money. I don't think there's really. I think it'd be better to have that incentive. Like I say, you can't be getting prostitutes ringing. Just this. Here's a directory, Smith. Just order one of these, mate, and you can come in. Right? It'd have to be relationships, people that have been on your visitors list, people that have been to visit you for X amount of time, and like you said, not under coercion as well, like you said, because a prison can't be seen to be like sexual exploitation sort of thing, and involved in that. But do you think it could reduce potentially violence? And I don't know about drug taking. If you're an addict, you're an addict, and it's like, do I take the addictive substance or do I want the addictive sex? I don't. Do you think it? Do you think it? Well,
I don't think any harm. I don't think if it was done properly, like we've discussed, with all of those checks, those safety measures in place, I don't see that it could do any harm at all. Going back a few years, actually, I remember when, I don't know if it was a particular governor or whether it was the entire prison service had decided this.
Yeah.
But they decided that all the like page 3 pictures and Playboy pictures had to come down off walls, and I really disagreed with that. I had proper rows with like POs and governors about that. I was like, it's wrong. Well, it's not decent. We've got female staff here. I was like, but these guys live here. This is their house for now.
Yeah. And
I had a real problem with, you know, back in the day where they used to call it LBBs, locks, bolts and bars.
Yeah.
Now they call it AFCs, accommodation fabric checks, which they weren't doing at Winchester, which is why they dug out through the wall. I had a real problem with being told to go in and tear down these pictures off lads' walls. I had a real issue with that. So yeah, the conjugal visits is like the extreme end of the spectrum. It's a human need.
Yeah. The thing is, a lot of people, obviously, the argument against that would be, for obviously playing devil's advocate. All these journalists, when they always throw the devil's advocate, Cody, but surely they give up the right for sex when they went to prison. But I say to them the exactly same thing as you said, Joe. Loss of liberty is the punishment. Once we get over that, it should be about reskilling these people. Start at the ground up. Give the amount of the amount of prisoners in the system that are either dyslexic, illiterate, things like that, and start at the ground floor and work upwards. And sex on a visit, I believe, like I said, you can't give it, everyone should be entitled to it, but you can't, because there's no incentive then. You can't be on basic, you've got no telly, but you can smash your missus once a month. You can't give them that right. So that's why I said the carrot and stick approach. Keep walking, keep doing good, and you'll get your carrot, mate. And like I said, do you know what the strangest thing is people could conceive, because women, right? I did an interview on Good Morning Britain, right? And it was about prisoners and IVF with their partners. Now, my argument was that, yeah, I do believe they should be given it. But then they were like, yeah, but they're taking you in prison and all this stuff. And I get that. And it was sort of a weak argument from my side, because you're pissing in the wind. You really are. But the thing is, I said that the partner of that prisoner, if this kid's serving a 20 rec, a minimum 20-year tariff, her biological clock's ticking. So why shouldn't she be able? So she's not guilty of an offence. She's just guilty of supporting her man. So I sort of went down that route. But the conjugal visit is something that I believe would, in part, not fully. I would be so interested to see a 3-year breakdown of statistics if we introduce conjugal visits with everything that we've spoken about, to see if there is a reduction. I'd love to see that, because I believe.
Yeah. It'd be interesting, although you might find the flip side of it, doing the devil's advocate thing. The flip side of it could be that the people who are going to earn those visits are the ones who aren't going around doing the violence anyway. So you probably find maybe that if you were to do this as a pilot for like 2 years, I imagine that a lot of the people getting these visits would have been the same kind of people who would have been the #1 cleaner and the #1 hot plate and the #1 gym orderly, who aren't going around smashing officers and prisoners' faces in any way. Because I mean, certainly when I did my training at Feltham, and obviously Lewis has it's a YOI as well, so it starts from 18. I find that some of those prisoners in the YOI and the juvenile don't actually have the impulse control to be able to think that far in terms of, right, if I don't smash this screw's jaw in, I might get a conjugal visit in 2 years' time. I don't know if they're able to process that. I think it'd be more lads like you and the #1 gym orderly you'd be.
I agree with you. because like you said, when you can't control your temper, or when you're that age, especially like I said, YOI 18 to 21, it's very like they're in a violent. You're in that environment where I never went through the young offenders institutions or YP, right? But like for me, like look at Feltham. You talked about when you did your training in Feltham, Aylesbury, these young offenders institute. These kids are all bouncing around thinking the cock of the walk, chip on the shoulder, and I can imagine the violence levels in a young offenders institution probably exceeds that of like a local or an adult male jail. But like I said, if they don't think of the consequences, then it's as simple as that. That they're going to keep getting busted down. They'll work their way up back to enhanced after 3 months of good behaviour, and then you put an officer, bam, straight away you lose it. And it's something to work towards, because like I said, it is the carrot and stick approach. And when I speak like this, I try to be a balanced argument. And like I said, you can't just say, yeah, well, you've not got an incentive to behave, but just give every prisoner conjugal visits, because the system has to win in some regard. They've got to get something back. It's give and take. You give good behaviour, you give good behaviour, you reduce violence, and hopefully I would love to see a 2-year pilot statistical breakdown if that was ever rolled out. But the fact is, I know that it'll never happen, and I think you agree, Joe.
Yeah, you're right.
Your opinions on the smoking ban. The Prison Officers Association. The Prison Officers Association lobbied, even going as far as threatening or pulling a judicial review to get the smoking ban.
I remember it. I was out of the job at that time, but I remember following it on the news, on Twitter and everything else. And I think I was still in that Know the Danger group, which I left a long time ago, by the way. So I was reading all about it when it was going on. I think it's I understand that tobacco. They always said that tobacco or burn is a big problem in terms of getting sold at extortionate price. People get bullied for it. People get it taken off them by force, even before the smoking ban I'm talking about. There's prisoners. The amount of times I've had cell bells go when I've been on patrol. Gov, if I don't get a burn, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. So yeah, burn was already causing problems in the prison before it was banned.
Yeah. But
banning it, to me, means that you got a load of. I think I've 90% of prisoners smoke. Was the statistic when I was in the service.
Yeah.
That's a genuine statistic.
Yeah.
So by banning it, you've got 90% of a locked up, angry population getting more angry because they can't smoke. And the officers are having. I thought the POA was trying to shoot themselves in the nads with that particular one. I was like, guys, pick your battles. Do you want a wing of 240 prisoners who are gasping for a fag? And when some finally does come in under the new regime, we all know it's going to still come in, just like drugs come in, just like bombs come in. I'm sure tobacco. It's created a new market, hasn't it? So anyone who does have it is either going to be powerful enough to sit at the top of the tree and sell it, or they're going to be weak enough to have the shit kicked out of them and have it taken off them when they do get some. So
Hold on. I've got the former prisoner that just tried to WhatsApp me and it went quiet there. But my opinion on the smoking ban was, and I don't know if you agree with this, I saw it as prisoners were sleeping, well, not sleeping dogs in that regard, because obviously everything else was going on. But it was like poking a sleeping dog or in the cage of a sleeping dog, right? Knowing that when you smoke, you're going to smoke more. When you're stressed, you're going to smoke more. It was also currency within the wing, and obviously that's not a good thing. But everyone was reliant on it. Whether it was, I don't smoke, Joe. I've never smoked in my life, but I used to use it as currency. I didn't buy drugs or sell drugs. I'd just say, like, I used to just get tobacco, and if someone was selling something and I wanted it, I would just use tobacco to go and get it. But hold on, let me just put you in hold on. Right, so with the smoking ban, I literally looked at it like, because by banning it, it doesn't disappear, as you know. It gets pushed underground, it becomes contraband. The price goes up X amount, and then what happens from that is it incurs debt. Where you've got debt, you've got fear, intimidation, bullying, and violence, and you've also got the added pressure that prisoners are up in arms.
Yeah, I remember saying I've still got mates who, a few of them are out now, but a few are still in. And I remember when this was going on, I said, "Thank Christ I've left. Thank Christ I've left before this ban came in." I couldn't have thought of anything worse than trying to work when you were implementing that ban. Just, I know you get vapes now, but I vape and it's no substitute for a cigarette.
So you still find yourself craving for tobacco? Even though you've got tobacco, what milligrams you buy, like 11s, 18s, or whatever?
3. I'm on 3. It don't really touch the sides.
3. So you're trying to get towards non-smoking, aren't you? But the thing is, like I said, the tobacco, like the prison, Mark Fairhurst, me and him did a radio interview, and he said it's all about prison officers' health. They're on these wings with this recycle there, right? What's that?
I get that completely. I followed that side of the argument as well. It's a tough one, isn't it? I'm not sure how you could do it. If it really was about the health, is there a way around it? Could you have a smoking room with vents in it, like they have at Gatwick Airport, which is like a smelly pod you go and stand in, and it sucks the air out, and it stinks of fags. But there's always going to be an officer who smokes who'd be happy enough to go in there and say, "Right, lads, it's banged up."
And you can only get your back in because if you've got burn on the wing, you're obviously going to smoke it. But even on the yard, when you're going on exercise as well, you could get your smoking pack. Right, there's your smoking pack. Go on the yard, have a smoke, hand it back in, and then. But obviously they probably smoke. You know how it fucking goes. They'd be like trying to cheek it or something, ball it, and then trying to get it back onto the wing. So this is the thing with prisoners. But with the smoking ban, I'm never sure it is a good thing. I understand officers' health and stuff, and I get that. I personally, I'm a non-smoker, and I don't like smoking. But who am I to say that other people? We're all in an enclosed area. We're in prison. You can't. So people smoking, that's their thing, man, and just leave them to it. That was my attitude towards it.
Yeah, pretty much the same for me. I understood that there was health risks to the staff, and I don't know. It's a real tough one. I think it should have just been managed rather than banned.
Yeah, I agree with you 1,000%. I'm trying to think what else I want to ask you, Joe, if anything at all. I think we might have covered everything I wanted to ask. See, the one thing I'd be interested to do, I don't know if you'd be free down the line, and it wouldn't be for as long as this, but there's a guy called Q, right? He's on my channel. He's done loads of videos. He served time in Lewis, and he's very articulate. He's more articulate than I am. He really speaks really well. And I just wondered one day, plan it in the future, down the line, that me, you, and Q could potentially do like a little debate. And like I said, I know there's certain things you obviously can't speak about, but just have a debate about Lewis, the prison, just in general, talking about like we've just done here, but different things, and possibly go into things a bit more. And he'll think of other questions. I don't know if it's something you'd be up for.
Yeah, we can sort that out.
I'll have to work around your shifts and everything like that. But what I was going to say to you, is there anything that you'd like to add before we finish off, Joe?
No, just thanks for giving us a chance to talk about this. Some people might watch it and go, "He's been out for years. What the fuck?" Do you know what I mean? Why is he on this channel? He's been out the job for years. He's doing something totally different. But I think the bread and butter of it is never going to change. The job is the job. It's you're locking people up for a living, and it's either good for some people, not good for others. It's a weird thing to do for a living, but someone's got to do it. And if you do choose to go into it, make it work for you. And just some of the things I've said will still apply, whether I've been out the job 10, 15 years. I think, like I say, the biggest one being don't be a dick.
The one thing, Joe, before I'm just asking this question, I'm not being nosy. So why did you leave the service? Just so people know. I'm just interested to know in general.
That's absolutely fine. I can talk about that. No dramas. In a nutshell, I was getting bored. The regime the regime that we were running was stripped down to bare bones. We were being run ragged, cross-deployed from wing to wing to wing to wing. So you were never building any relationships with prisoners because you were always just running around. Right, do association on A wing, then you've got to go and unlock education on C wing, and that was it. You were run ragged. I was getting fed up of it. I'd done it for longer than I'd done any other job in my life. And I decided I'd started an open university degree whilst I was an officer. In fact, I'd sometimes be sat up on the 3s or 4s with the textbooks, and life just took a different direction. When I got that degree, I decided to move into something else.
When you started that open university degree, was it because you was looking for an exit strategy from the service, and you started to study whilst you were still working as an officer?
Yes, I did. Yeah, I could see that my time was coming to an end. I knew the service wasn't the service that I joined. The staffing had been stripped out, like you said, around about 2012, 13. The violence was going up. I was getting older, you know, I was less keen on rolling around on the landing with people than maybe when I were in my mid-20s. So yeah, I thought, do you know what? I don't want to be one of these guys who gets caught out in 20 years' time with no escape plan. So I started this OU degree and then moved on from there. Yeah.
Best thing you ever did.
Yeah.
Seeing how bad the service has gotten and the problems that have been encountered, we are literally like, wow, like I'm so grateful that I left when I did.
I am grateful I left when I did, because I've had opportunities since then that I've made for myself, which I've done things with. It's still a good job. If you want to make it a job for life, it's one of the few jobs for life that's still around. Do I regret joining? No, not at all. That's a really important thing to leave it on, I think. I might have left the job, but do I regret having done it? No. I wouldn't have had half the experiences and met half the people, and I'm talking about prisoners as well as other officers that I've met in my life. I've met some pretty bloody interesting people, and we've had some laughs, and I've done some fairly wild things. So yeah, give it a go.
One thing I'm interested to know, last thing, I'm interested to know this because I like I said, I referred to it during the thing. Has your time as an officer had impacted your mental health in any capacity? I'm trying to, because what it is, I've got a thing with this thing because I know that example, Neil Samworth, for example, his experience, the bread and butter and the diet, like the concept is the same, but obviously different experiences, different times, but it's all the same. He's got post-traumatic stress disorder and he's spoken about it in his book. Did it impact your mental health, or you sort of?
Yeah, definitely. I've never gone for any kind of mental health service or seen doctors about it, but there are things that I call it residue. It sticks to you, certain things.
Yeah.
I don't like people banging doors. I don't like people banging metal gates, things like that. I don't like carrying big bunches of keys. These are all things that make me sort of go, no. I can be quite intolerant of big crowds of people. And I find that still sometimes if my button is pressed wrong, I'm a very mellow guy. But if my button is pressed wrong, it's almost as if that little bit of me that was a screw for so many years comes back to life. Doesn't happen very often, but when it does, I think I look back on it and was like, a colleague actually, I was angry about something work related, and she said, "Oh my God, I've never seen you look like that. You look like a different person." It was like this sort of thing comes down over my face. I'm different. I remember once, not long after I'd left the service, like I say, I'm quite mellow, but a bloke at a train station had tutted because my lad was a toddler then, and he was toddling down the stairs at the train station. Obviously not very. He tutted, and normally that kind of thing would just go over my head, and I was nose to nose with him. So yeah, it does. I just turned round and literally, I was literally just, something in my brain just went, and I went into screw mode, and I was, what was that, pal? You know, it's like, and then I told my friend about it, who was also an ex-officer. He was like, dude, you need to not do that anymore. You're not in prison now. So yeah, it leaves effects.
I don't think that anyone can go do the job of an officer. I'm talking, like I said, from a prisoner's perspective. I do admire people that do the job for as long as they do, because the psychological and emotional impact, you can't unsee those things. You can't unsee dead bodies. You see that one in your life, right? People could literally drink themselves to death, drug addiction, seeing it countless times through what used to be, in my opinion, it's a career in the sense that you do it for decades, but it's not a career that, it doesn't need to be a career anymore. It seems to be something that people get into, they do for a few years, and then they leave. Yeah. It seems to be dying trades in the sense of a career. Oh,
sorry, my door's just going. 1 second.
Go on. Joe, go on.
Sorry, someone's just knocked at the door.
Come on.
That's all right, the other house getting it.
Right, yeah. So, yeah, the thing is, I don't think it used to be a career, but it doesn't seem to be a career anymore. It seems to be things that people do for a few years.
Yeah, you're absolutely right there. Definitely.
You're like you're heading for the stairs.
Hey?
Going back upstairs?
No, my Asda delivery's just arrived. Forgot about it.
Listen, Joe, do you know what? On that note, mate, we'll leave it there. I'm so grateful for your time. What do you think about this thing compared to Zoom?
Miles better, absolutely.
Quick, and you know, when I sent you the link, did you just press it and it brings you straight in, or does it?
Yeah, I didn't need an email address or anything. Straight in.
It's clear, it's constant, and it's as quick and easy to use as that.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Yeah, keep using it.
Right, Joe. Listen, I am 3 hours 36 minutes. I am so grateful for your time. Right. You speak so well. What I'll do, I'll dive off. I'll upload it tonight. But again, I'm so grateful for your time, your experiences, and just your knowledge as a whole.
No worries. Cheers. Thank you. Take care.
God bless, Joe. Speak to you soon, man. Take care, Joe.
Okay,
bye.